Hi everyone. Tonight, we enter a world where snow hisses against the walls of a hide-covered lodge, and the wind seems determined to test the courage of anyone inside. You move forward in heavy boots, or moccasins if we want to be precise, and the cold bites your cheeks so sharply you wonder if you'll ever feel your nose again. The snowstorm doesn't ask for permission. It roars, it presses, it steals breath. Honestly, if you were outside in a thin coat right now, survival would be unlikely. Before we settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy my work. I'd also love to know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights and let's step together into the frozen night. The canvas wall in front of you isn't canvas, it's carefully tanned buffalo hides stretched over wooden poles. Each piece once belonged to a creature that thundered across the plains, and now it holds the storm at bay. Snowflakes slap against it with a dull thud, reminding you how thin that barrier is. Just a layer of hide stitched with sinew separates warmth from frostbite. You lean closer and hear the wood creak as the wind presses against the poles. Yet inside, there is comfort. You settle onto a fur-lined seat and watch the storm through a small gap near the base. Snow swirls violently outside. For a moment you wonder, how did people sleep through this? Historical accounts tell us that teepees, with their cone shape, were among the most efficient portable shelters. Perfect for the nomadic life of the plains tribes, they deflected wind better than square tents and allowed heat to rise naturally. Interestingly, some early explorers wrote in their journals that they envied the snug winter lodges of native people more than any log cabin. That small observation is always amusing. Imagine trudging through snow in heavy European wool and realizing the locals had far superior insulation. The warmth inside wasn't accidental. Every seam was carefully stitched. You notice the slight overlapping of hides at ground level, keeping snow from blowing in. Some families even stuff dry grass or moss into cracks before a storm, almost like creating double-pane windows. Not luxurious, but clever. Historians still debate whether buffalo hides alone could block the cold at temperatures below -40 degrees. Some insist they could, especially with multiple layers and a fire inside. Others argue families endured discomfort we can hardly imagine today. Perhaps both are true. Survival relied as much on adaptation, patience, and a bit of luck as on perfect insulation. You breathe in the scent of warmed hide and smoke. The air is dry, almost sweet. Gusts outside push harder, rattling the poles. Snow piles higher, pressing inward like an icy tide. Surprisingly, many welcomed this drift. Once built up, snow added another layer of insulation, sealing warmth inside. The very enemy attempting to freeze you became an accidental ally. You shift onto a blanket of wolf pelts. It feels coarse but reassuring. Children nearby are already nodding off, their cheeks rosy from the fire. One murmurs in sleep, turning toward the warmth. Perhaps they dream of buffalo hunts or sunny grasslands untouched by storms. The wind's rhythm on the teepee is almost hypnotic, like a drum keeping time. There's something unique about being in such a small space during a storm. The walls are thin, yet the closeness of bodies, the fire's crackle, and whispered prayers combine into a cocoon stronger than stone. Shadows flicker on the hide, shapes of running horses. The fire seems to tell its own story. Sleeping here is more than staying warm. It's about surrendering to the rhythm, trusting the walls, trusting that snow piling higher means a bright tomorrow. You pull the blanket closer, hear faint rattles from someone's clothing, and let the storm seep into your bones. Outside, the blizzard continues, but inside, life carries on. Babies feed. Elders murmur. Dogs curl near the entrance. And you begin to understand the fragility and strength of these people. Fragile because the walls are thin, strong because they turn them into survival fortresses. You lay your head down, feeling the snow's weight, the hide's protection, and the fire's pulse. Sleep drifts in, a balance between storm and shelter. When you awaken, the muffled roar outside remains. The storm prowls and the hides creak. You pull your blanket tighter and notice the walls seem thicker, heavier. The secret is clear. Buffalo hides, layered like a patchwork quilt, create insulation. Each skin is prepared, scraped, and soften to bend without cracking. The hide is strong yet flexible, and layered properly, it traps pockets of air. It works like modern winter jackets, insulation through layers, but here, nature provides the material for a full-sized shelter. Historical records suggest one teepee could require 12 to 20 hides, often taken from full-grown bison that once roamed the plains in massive herds, appearing like dark oceans. You can almost see those herds, animals whose hides would later shield families from storms. Some families preferred cow hides. They were lighter and easier to sew. Bull hides were thicker and better for wind but heavier to transport. Imagine debating whether to use the stubborn bull hides or manageable cow hides, knowing a poor choice meant a winter of chattering teeth. Historians still debate the effectiveness of hides alone. Some argue that without a fire, no number of layers could keep one warm. Others suggest that, combined with smart placement and snowdrifts, the hides allowed families to sit comfortably near the fire. The truth probably lies in between. You run your hand across one inner layer. It feels slightly oily, treated with animal fat to repel moisture and prevent the hide from freezing stiff in frost. The faint scent of tallow blends with smoke, giving the lodge an earthy, comforting aroma. Look closely at the seams, and you see the care in every stitch. The seams aren't perfectly straight like machine stitching. They curve diagonally, like vines twisting around each other. Each overlap is deliberate, leaving no gaps for the wind to sneak through. The sinew threads creak softly as the poles flex, but they hold firm. You imagine hands at work here, women and girls pulling needles through thick hides, maybe laughing, maybe grumbling about sore fingers. Outside, snow piles higher, yet something catches your attention. The bottom edges of the hides are carefully secured with stones or sticks, stopping wind from slipping underneath like an unwelcome intruder. Occasionally, snow itself is pressed against the base, forming a paradoxical blanket. You smile, thinking of the irony. Snow, which brings cold, is here welcomed as protection. A child shifts in sleep, tugging a deer's skin around his shoulders. The firelight glints off the layered hides, casting them in bronze-like shine. You realize these hides offer more than physical shelter. They provide emotional safety. To enter a lodge lined with them is to step into memories of hunts, survival, and communal effort. Each hide tells a story: the chase, the butchering, tanning, caring. A distant wolf howl cuts through the storm, yet the hides muffle it, making the threat seem less immediate. You stretch your legs, brushing the cold firmness of the hide walls. Some chill penetrates, but compared to the storm outside, it feels like paradise. Another detail draws your eye: soot marks near the smoke hole. These tell of countless fires, countless storms endured. The hides are seasoned, darkened by use, infused with the lives they sheltered. Closing your eyes, you think of the labor behind a single night of warmth: hunting the buffalo, skinning, scraping, stretching, sewing, oiling, assembling the lodge, layering hides. Also, a family can sleep through a snowstorm. Outside, the storm rages indifferent, but inside, the hides hold the line. You settle deeper into your blanket, listening as the wind tests every seam. It presses, rattles, moans, but the hides remain steadfast. For the first time, you let yourself drift, knowing the storm might triumph someday, but not tonight. The night stretches long, the storm still sharp and clawing. Yet the lodge's center glows in quiet defiance. The heart of every teepee is its fire. You turn toward it, blinking against the flickering light. Flames dance low, coaxed carefully, burning neither too fiercely nor too weakly. Orange light splashes across curved walls, and for a moment, the blizzard fades entirely. It feels like floating in a pocket of warmth, the outside world reduced to faint growls beyond the hides. Most historians agree that this central fire was more than convenience. It was lifeline. Without it, the interior would freeze, no matter the number of furs. The teepee's cone shape created a natural chimney, guiding smoke upward and allowing airflow even with partially closed flaps. Ingenious engineering, born of necessity and perfected through centuries. Families treated the fire with care. Children were warned against tossing scraps into it, because each ember was precious. Sparks could scar hides or burn holes, Some bands even had children feed tiny sticks to the fire ceremonially, each offering significant. Indeed, on a night like this, fire meant life. Scholars debate how warm the lodge became during snowstorms. Some suggest it could be hot enough to sit in shirts near the flames. Others argue warmth barely reached the edges, leaving sleepers shivering under heavy furs. Disagreement exists because few outsiders truly experienced a winter night the way native families did. You sit cross-legged, watching smoke spiral upward. Logs are few, selected carefully. Gathering wood in a storm is difficult, so each piece must stretch. The fire is deliberately small, providing steady heat without consuming all resources. Its crackle is soft, steady, like a purring animal. You lean closer, palms extended, feeling heat sting your fingers. Flames cast shifting shadows across the walls, hunters, bowstrings, bison herds, stories told without words. The family huddles nearby. Elders lean back on mats, children press against their mothers, dogs curl near the entrance. Each place is intentional. Elders sit closest to the fire, adjusting flaps for safety. Younger ones occupy edges where cold presses hardest. The air carries the scent of wood smoke mingled with fat from earlier meals. Clinging to hair, clothes, skin, it's oddly comforting. The smell signals warmth, food, and safety. Inhaling, you taste survival itself. Outside, the storm rages, denied entrance. Snow piles higher against the lodge, muffling the world. Inside, time softens. A boy pokes embers with a stick, his grandmother chuckles softly. Her words rise and fall like lullabies, half drowned by snow's hiss. You realize how fragile this system is. Fire inside hides, smoke threading upward, snow pressing down. One wrong move, collapse is possible. Yet it works, generations have proven it. Traders recorded teepees impressing outsiders with warmth, even more than log cabins hastily built by settlers. Stepping into such a lodge with frost encrusting your beard is like entering a lantern-lit haven. Some journals note families banked fires at night with dried buffalo chips. Not glamorous, not fragrant, but effective. Slow-burning dung kept embers alive until morning. Practicality turned lifesaver. Anthropologists debate whether fire was purely practical or also symbolic. For many tribes, flame was sacred, connecting physical and spiritual worlds. Storm nights may have doubled as vigils, hands warming, spirits guarded. You stretch your legs toward the glow. Heat pricks your shins while your back feels drafts. This contrast defines the night. You shift closer to balance warmth. Children snuggle parents, dogs twitch, chasing dreams. The fire crackles, steady, unbothered by the storm. Its rhythm becomes hypnotic, lulling adults into drowsy silence. Words fade. Only the flames speak. Now close your eyes and for a moment, it feels as if you are inside a beating heart. The fire pulses in rhythm. Outside, the storm lashes against the lodge like blood against skin. The lodge itself breathes with you, exhaling smoke, whispering warmth. You sink into this rhythm, letting the balance between the danger outside and comfort inside take over. The fire crackles quietly, and as you lean back, you notice something unusual along the base of the lodge. The snow, once an enemy pounding the teepee, now acts as a silent guardian. You study how it naturally piles against the hides, pressed tighter by the storm's force. At first glance, snow seems troublesome, cold, wet, uncomfortable. Yet here it serves as insulation, like thick white mortar sealing a home. Early travelers often noted that snow piled around lodges made them unusually cozy, as if humans had borrowed the idea from fox dens. Packed snow traps air, retaining warmth even better than bare hides. In a strange twist, the storm that threatens you also works to keep you alive. You can almost hear the quiet amusement of those who discovered this trick. Let the snow do the work. Some families even practiced shoveling snow deliberately against the lower walls rather than brushing it away. It might seem odd, but they instinctively understood the science of comfort. Snow insulates, seals, and softens sound. Inside, you feel the effect. The wind's shriek dulls to a muted moan, and drafts near your legs bite less. The storm has become a blanket. Scholars debate whether this method was used universally or only in harsher climates. Some suggest northern plains tribes used heavy snowpacking, while southern groups needed it less. Others argue that even in milder regions, snow occasionally helped. Likely, each group adapted based on terrain, season, and survival needs. You stretch a hand toward the wall. The hide is firm, cold, slightly damp where the snow presses hardest, yet inside, the air is steady, warmed by fire and bodies. You imagine elders teaching this trick to the younger members. Do not scrape it away, it will keep us safe tonight. The storm outside remains violent, but where the snow has packed, its sound softens. You listen, almost lulled by the muffled rhythm. The teepee becomes a quiet drum, snow layering itself higher. You think of burrowing animals, badgers, foxes, bears, who understood long before humans that snow can be shelter, not just a hazard. Early ethnographers observed children sometimes playing with snowbanks, poking tiny holes to watch flakes sparkle, only to be scolded and the holes patched with moss or leather. Mischief and survival, together under one roof. Experts note that snow could also be risky. Too much weight could strain poles, and meltwater might dampen hides and bedding. Families needed a careful balance. Enough snow to insulate, not enough to flood. They learned this trial by trial, night by night. Opening your eyes, the firelight shines on the packed wall, turning the snow faintly golden where it meets the hide. It glows like a lantern pressed against darkness. You lean back, listening to the hiss of flakes and occasional thumps of falling clumps. Despite the storm, the lodge feels calmer. Smoke, damp leather, and earthy warmth fill the air. You breathe in deeply, grateful. Your toes wiggle beneath a pelt, the heat richer than before. The fierce snow outside has become an ally. Children murmur in sleep nearby, breathing evenly. A woman adjusts a hide flap, letting smoke escape without letting cold in. Satisfied, she curls back beside her family, feeling peace as the storm outside stands guard rather than threat. Snow softens everything: wolves, wind, footsteps. Tomorrow it may be a burden, but for now it protects. You lie back, eyes drooping, aware of the paradox. Snow, dangerous outside, a guardian at the wall. The fire hums, a slow heartbeat in the lodge, while the storm rages beyond. You notice how close everyone is, pressed together. The space holds an entire family, parents, children, perhaps a grandparent, dogs nestled against hides. You feel collective warmth, a living furnace of shared breath and bodies. Traditional records show that sleeping closely was survival science. Multiple bodies release enough heat to make cold nights bearable, the same principle seen in penguins or deer clustering for warmth. Families arranged themselves carefully. Parents often shielded children on the outer edges, elders sat nearer the fire for comfort and oversight, and the youngest were wrapped in furs between parents, forming a cocoon of heat. Winter campers would recognize this logic. No one sleeps alone. Some anthropologists debate whether this closeness was welcome. Nights were cramped, bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder, air thick with smoke. Experts argue fatigue and irritation would persist, yet intimacy also built patience and resilience. Survival demanded togetherness, even if a few elbows nudged in the dark. You adjust your blanket, listening to synchronized breathing. A low snore, a child's soft sigh. These sounds reassure, like a tide to float upon. In today's world, silence may be comforting, but here, it would be terrifying. Noise means life, presence, shared warmth. Less known is that children sometimes fell asleep not only to lullabies but to steady drumbeats or the rattle of beads, sounds combined with the storm, comforting and rhythmic. A layered rhythm wrapped the lodge in a sense of security. You lie there, eyelids heavy, listening to the fire crackle and the soft hum of a grandmother's voice, and suddenly even the fiercest blizzard feels far away. As you shift, your skin brushes another's arm, a reminder of how little privacy exists. Every cough, every turn, every sigh is shared. Yet in this lack of space, there is comfort. No one is alone in the dark. The community becomes your blanket. Modern life often emphasizes separate beds, separate rooms, even separate homes for family members. Here, the opposite is true. The storm teaches that closeness is survival. Perhaps that's why stories, laughter, and traditions spread so easily in these lodges. Every night is a gathering, every storm a reminder that endurance is collective. Explorers often marveled at this intimacy, describing natives sleeping in bundles, like puppies in straw. The comparison may seem clumsy, but it captures the truth. Puppies huddle for warmth, safety, and affection. Humans do the same. The storm rages outside, but inside, warmth surrounds you. The air carries the sense of furs, sweat, and smoke, mingling into something grounding. Your breath condenses at the lodge's edges, yet the huddle keeps the center warm and comfortable. Some experts suggest that shared sleeping influence dreams. Pressed close together, breathing in rhythm, dreams may have taken on a communal quality, stories shared in the morning, as if the storm whispered the same message to many at once. Others dismiss this as romantic speculation, but haven't you ever woken from a dream that reflected a room's mood? You pull your furs tighter, nesting closer. The warmth spreads steadily. The fire glows faintly, mirrored by the heat radiating from those around you. The storm howls, shaking the poles, yet no one stirs. Sleep holds the group, proving stronger than the blizzard. A dog shifts, pressing against your foot, a small furnace, fur thick, tail curled over its nose. You grin softly. Another companion, another source of warmth. Breathing in unison, you drift. The storm can rage as it pleases. Here, shoulder to shoulder, you know the secret. Warmth comes not from solitude, but from gentle closeness with those who share the night. You roll slightly, hand brushing something firm yet springy beneath the furs. It isn't bare ground. Woven willow branches, reed mats, and layered brush lift you above the frozen earth. In the storm's teeth, this detail is critical. It separates frost-bitten mornings from energetic ones. Native families understood the danger of sleeping directly on snow or frozen ground. Cold seeped upward like a thief, even through thick furs. To counter it, they made bedding platforms, bundled grass or rush mats, sometimes sturdier frames of poles and woven twigs, topped with hides. Think of it as an early, practical mattress. Travelers noted how carefully these layers were assembled. Willow branches were prized. They bent without breaking, providing spring and airflow. Mats and skins, deer, elk, or buffalo, were layered on top. Crude in appearance, but remarkably comfortable. The bedding cacks softly under weight, keeping the body dry and elevated above the damp snow. Scholars debate whether raised bedding was universal. In milder regions, furs on the ground sufficed. In harsher climates, platforms were essential. Oral traditions emphasize lifting above frozen earth. The evidence varied by tribe, season, and resources, so the question lingers. You notice textures beneath you, faintly earthy, sweet reeds rustle with every shift, a reminder that survival lies in small details. A missionary once recorded families stuffing dried sage or juniper into bedding. It cushioned the ground and released subtle scents with body heat. Falling asleep to sage amid a blizzard, practicality meets comfort. You trace the hide covering the bedding. Stiff in some areas, softened in others by years of use. You imagine a mother laying it carefully, smoothing wrinkles, tucking corners to block drafts. The bedding is more than comfort, it is ritual. Each night reinforces care, stability, and hope that the family will rest safely until morning. Outside, the storm groans, rattling the poles, but beneath you, the bedding feels secure. Warmth from others is amplified by insulation from below. The lodge becomes a layered defense, hides above, snow pressed around, fire at the heart, and now the humble mat beneath. Observers often admitted admiration for such ingenuity. Expecting hardship, they discovered a system refined enough that nights were tolerable, even cheerful. One explorer confessed he slept better on woven grass and buffalo hides than in his own tent with a cot. Nestling into the bedding, your body relaxes. The layers cradle shoulders and hips. The design is deliberate, honed through generations of knowledge. Keep your back from the frozen earth, and you will live. Some experts note raised platforms also improved air circulation. Heat rises from the fire, cold stays near the floor. Lifting sleepers slightly makes the air feel warmer, less harsh. Small tricks mastered without textbooks. Children often turned beds into play areas before sleep, bouncing on mats, giggling. Adults scolded them, but laughter mingled with survival, woven into nightly routines. Shifting again, supported by the bedding, you watch the fire flicker. Shadows dance, the lodge breathes, and you feel secure. Not because the storm has ended, it still lashes outside, but because every layer of defense has been carefully arranged. Hides, snow, fire, closeness, bedding. Each element supports the next, forming a fragile yet remarkable fortress. The bedding sinks softly beneath you, a lullaby in itself. You close your eyes, picturing the countless others who slept this way, hearing the same storm, trusting the same mats for protection. Their breath mingled with yours, their dreams echo in yours, their endurance cradles you tonight. As the fire sighs, the snow presses closer, and your body rests on branches with hides draped above the frozen ground, you let yourself drift deeper into sleep. The storm may rage, but you have found shelter, and for now that is enough. Outside, icy fingers crawl across the hides, but inside another layer of night emerges, not through sight, but through smell. The lodge is alive with aromas that wrap around you like the furs on your shoulders. Accounts from early traders note that winter nights in teepees carried the same mixture: wood smoke, tallow, and animal hide. These scents became so familiar that travelers could identify a lodge before entering. To the people living here, the smells signified home, security, and warmth. A curious practice involved using tallow lamps or embedding fat into embers. These provided light, but also a greasy, savory scent that clung to every surface. You notice it now, thick, almost sweet, slightly bitter at the edges. It is not the perfumed air of a modern bedroom, yet over time, it soothes, a reminder that warmth is being earned, ember by ember. Researchers still debate whether people found these scents comforting or oppressive. Some describe the air as heavy and stinging, others recall its coziness, the reassurance it provided. Tonight, you sense both, a tickle in your throat, but also calm, knowing the storm cannot erase this warmth. The hides themselves contribute a scent of their own. Stretched, smoked, and treated with fat, they emit a leathery, earthy aroma. You trace the inner wall with your fingers, feeling its roughness, hearing the faint squeak of hardened skin. The smell clings to your fingertips, a reminder that these walls were once living protectors now standing against the storm. Some families burned herbs, sage, cedar, sweetgrass, when storms roared the loudest. The fragrant smoke refreshed the air and was believed to carry protective power, warding off illness and misfortune. You imagine tendrils of scented smoke curling upward, weaving with the blizzard outside, a quiet act of defiance against chaos. The fire pops softly, sending more aroma into the space. Fat drips and hisses, filling the lodge with a savory scent reminiscent of roasting meat, though no meal is cooking. It lingers on clothing, hair, and bedding. Even stepping outside tomorrow, the smell will remain, an invisible blanket marking where you have stayed. Anthropologists debate whether constant exposure to smoke and tallow impacted health. Some claim it caused coughing, eye irritation, and shortness of breath. Others argue lungs adapted, and warmth outweighed the drawbacks. Perhaps the truth lies in between. Discomfort existed, yet sleeping without fire was unthinkable. Survival demanded accepting smoke as the price of warmth. Nearby, children sleep undisturbed. Their small chests rise and fall, faces buried in furs. They grew up with these scents, which for them signify safety. You smile softly, realizing comfort depends on context. The storm slams harder, shaking loose a light dusting of snow through the smoke hole. It hisses on the embers, releasing a sharper, cleaner scent, as if the storm briefly joined the lodge, then withdrew. You close your eyes, letting the sensory world wash over you, the hide, the smoke, the faint taste of tallow, forming a tangible atmosphere of survival. Remarkably, these odors lull you into sleep. They create a sensory pattern, smoke scratching lightly in your lungs, the fatty sweetness of tallow, the leather embrace of hides. They ground you, tethering you to warmth even as the storm rages. One explorer noted he could never wash the smell of a night in a teepee from his coat, perhaps a complaint, but also proof that he had been protected when the blizzard threatened. You breathe deeply, letting the scents carry you further into drowsiness. Smoke signals fire still burns. Fat signals stored food. Hide signals the walls hold firm. Together, they reassure you, for now, you are safe. The storm fades to background noise. Your senses remain anchored to the smoky, leathery, tallow-sweet cocoon of the lodge. It is neither perfect nor glamorous, but it is life. You surrender to the fragrant night. Outside, the storm hums like a distant drum. Inside, a different rhythm emerges, one of people. Your ears detect a low song, hums deep and slow, carrying no words at first, weaving the storm into something nearly musical. Observers of winter camps noted that music was rarely absent, even in harsh conditions. Lobbies, chants, and soft rattles often filled the night. These were simple, practical expressions, a grandmother murmuring, a father tapping a drum to calm children. You imagine these faint notes slipping past the blizzard, a message: rest. You are safe. Some families used rattles from gourds or turtle shells filled with pebbles. The soft shake mirrored falling snow or rushing wind. Children listened wide-eyed, then slowly closed their eyes as repetition soothed them. Sounds that might seem noisy by day became a lullaby at night. Ethnomusicologists debate whether these songs were purely comforting or carried deeper spiritual meaning. Some suggest they distracted children from fear or hunger, others see broader ceremonial roles. Some suggest that even the simplest hum carried significance, calling on ancestors or spirits to watch over the family. Evidence is scattered, and perhaps the truth lies in a combination of both. A lullaby could calm a baby while invoking unseen protection at the same time. You tilt your head, listening more intently. The melody has no distinct beginning or end. It drifts gently, like smoke spiraling toward the lodge's smoke hole. Your body relaxes, following the rhythm almost unconsciously. The storm outside becomes part of it. Winds howl along with the tune, rattling poles providing a natural percussion. Human voice and nature blend so seamlessly that you can no longer separate them. The firelight flickers, casting golden shadows across the walls. In that shifting glow, you notice lips moving, a figure swaying slightly, eyes half closed as the song continues. The sound is not meant for entertainment or applause, but to cradle minds. Even as an outsider, you feel your heartbeat slow in time with the song, a detail often overlooked. Sometimes, children took up the role themselves, whispering to dolls made from scraps of hide or bundles of grass. Their high, delicate voices drifted through the lodge, echoing the adults' cadence. You smile at the thought of these tiny singers practicing for the day they too would lull others during winter's roar. The music changes the atmosphere. Tension softens. A whimpering baby sighs and drifts to sleep. Adults murmur less, drawn into the melody. Even the dogs shift, ears flicking as though reassured. The song does not stop the storm, but it provides a rhythm to lean on, a pattern in the chaos. Scholars remain divided on whether certain lullabies were shared across tribes or unique to each family. Some evidence suggests common themes: sleep, safety, dreams of hunting, while others argue that each household preserved its own version, passed down like heirlooms. Likely, both are true. Some melodies were universal, others intensely personal, whispered only in select lodges on certain nights. Outside, the rattling grows louder, but the singing inside swells in response. It is not competition, it is harmony. The storm and the song perform a duet. The blizzard pounds with furious rhythm. Humans respond with softness, refusing to be silenced. The fire shifts, sending sparks upward. One ember snaps sharply, pausing the humming briefly. Then the voice resumes, soft at first, steady once more. You sink deeper into your furs, lulled by persistence. Surprisingly, the song draws you inward. Thoughts slow. Breathing evens. You are no longer just an observer, you are part of it. Your pulse aligns with the rhythm. Your mind drifts with the melody. You join the communal sleep, held by sound as surely as by warmth. Some explorers admitted, often reluctantly, that these night songs were the most peaceful moments of their journeys. One wrote that the storm outside felt like a child, and inside they were singing it to sleep. The image makes you smile, humans calming the very blizzard that threatened them. The song continues, winding through the hours. You let it carry you, imagining generations listening to similar tunes, wrapped in hides while storms raged endlessly across the plains. Voices changed, but the rhythm of survival and comfort remained. You close your eyes, letting the lullaby sink into your bones. The storm howls, the fire flickers, but the music teaches you to rest. Above, another comfort reveals itself. Bundles hang from the lodge poles, tied pouches, skins, and woven bags, kept out of reach of children and dogs. Initially, they appear decorative, but you recognize their purpose. Winter food stores, lifelines swaying in the storm. Historical accounts agree that pemmican was a staple of winter survival. This mixture of dried meat, fat, and sometimes berries could last months without spoiling. You picture the preparation: buffalo or elk dried in the sun, pounded into powder, mixed with melted fat until dense, a block of energy disguised as humble brown lumps. Not a modern delicacy, but in a storm like this, it was priceless. Pemmican held a spiritual dimension as well. Families treated hanging bundles almost like guardians. Children were taught not to touch without permission, not from greed, but because each pouch represented carefully measured survival. To waste it was to insult the family and the bison that gave its life. Historians debate whether pemmican was rationed strictly or shared more freely depending on confidence in nearby herds. Likely, practices shifted storm to storm and family to family, sometimes restraint, sometimes relief. You imagine the faint scent of the bundles, smoky meat, tart berries, and dense, waxy fat, an aroma that reassures hunger will not dominate the night. Travelers' journals also note dried fish, cornmeal, or wild rice stored in similar bundles. Lodge ceilings became pantries, keeping food safe from damp floors and curious animals. The ingenuity is clear. Every pole and rope serves a purpose. One explorer remarked, "A lodge in a storm holds its belly overhead." You chuckle. Food truly watched over the sleepers below. Beyond nourishment, hanging stores offered psychological comfort. In a howling blizzard, the sight of food reassured the family. Yes, the storm rages outside, but we will not starve tonight. Similar to the reassurance of a stocked cupboard in a modern home, multiplied many times over. The flickering firelight paints the hanging skins bronze and gold. Shadows swing like guardians. Children stir, comforted not just by warmth but by knowing sustenance waits above. An early missionary observed mothers telling children the bundles were sleeping animals, watching over them, a story to prevent midnight snacking, but also to animate the lodge. You smile at the idea, pemmican as a silent babysitter dangling from the rafters. Scholars continue to debate whether families relied solely on these stores or sometimes risked brief hunts during storms. Some argue hunters braved nearly any weather, driven by hunger. Others insist patience was wiser, conserving strength until the storm eased. Likely both explanations were true. Each night, choices carried a weight that no outsider can completely understand. The air changes as a draft slips inside, lifting the smell of smoke upward. It blends with the faint scent of dried meat hanging above, forming a mix of aromas that feels strangely comforting. You inhale slowly, sensing not only the lodge itself but also the quiet promise of tomorrow. Your thoughts drift to your own world, where food rests inside refrigerators, sealed in containers and hidden behind doors. Here, nothing is concealed. The sources of survival hang openly overhead. It is a steady reminder that storms eventually pass and hunger can be overcome. The fire pops once more, briefly lighting the bundles. They move gently, almost like pendulums measuring the hours of the storm. You imagine the generations before you who also looked upward in the same way, gauging hope by the sight of that ladder and drawing reassurance from its presence. And then a realization settles in. Enduring storms was never only about warmth, hides, or the insulation of snow. It also involved the mind. Seeing food stored above offered calm, quieting fear, steadying thoughts, and making rest possible. Without that reassurance, even warmth might not have been enough to bring sleep. You breathe more easily now. Your eyes slowly close, and your stomach feels comforted, not by fullness, but by the knowledge that sustenance waits overhead. The storm may rage outside, but the lodge holds a pantry in the sky. That promise alone is enough to guide you deeper into the night. The fire flickers lower. Shadows stretch across the interior, and your ears catch something beyond the familiar hum of wind. A sharper, wilder sound moves through the storm, the long, hollow howl of wolves. Their voices travel with the gale, weaving in and out of the blizzard's roar. You remain still, listening as your heart tightens briefly. This is no imagination. They are out there, moving beyond the snowbanks, their hunger sharpened by winter. Records from explorers often mentioned that wolves followed camps during difficult winters. It is widely known that these animals learned to move along the edges of settlements, drawn by the smell of meat, hides, and discarded scraps. To the people inside the lodge, the howls were not a novelty. They were regular reminders that the storm was not the only challenge waiting outside. What might surprise you is how differently those sounds were understood. To you, they may signal fear. Yet for the families here, wolves could also be teachers. Some tribes regarded them as symbols of loyalty and cleverness. Their presence became part of stories that explained survival itself. The howl outside might cause a shiver. At the same time, it reminded listeners of a connection with creatures facing the same storm. Researchers still debate how often wolves truly threatened camps. Some accounts claim they rarely approached too closely, acting more as scavengers when humans and fire were present. Others suggest that during especially harsh winters, hungry packs could become bold enough to challenge lone hunters. The discussion continues, shaped by scattered records, some filled with fear, others marked by respect. The lodge shifts slightly in the wind. You glance toward the entrance flap and imagine the world beyond it. A blur of white snow, distant shapes moving slowly, lean bodies circling. Inside, the family murmurs quietly. An elder shifts on his mat with a low grunt, perhaps noticing the sound but showing no alarm. Children pull the hides closer around themselves, yet no one panics. The danger is recognized, but not exaggerated. A lesser-known detail from early journals mentions that dogs inside lodges often reacted first. Their ears would twitch, and low growls would form deep in their throats. Tonight, you feel that response beside you. The dog resting at your feet suddenly stiffens. It lifts its head and releases a quiet rumble. It does not bark, only a warning, a shared signal that something moves beyond the canvas wall. The fire answers with a sharp snap. Embers glow brighter for a moment. Your eyes drift upward to the bundles of food hanging overhead. The wolves likely smell them too. The thought sends a brief shiver across your skin. Yet it also highlights the careful design of the lodge. Food is kept high, hides are sealed tightly, and snowbanks are packed around the walls. Wolves may circle, but entry remains impossible. Some anthropologists still question whether storms themselves encouraged wolves to become bolder. Did the heavy snow conceal human scent, blurring the boundary between wild and settled space? Did hunger draw animals closer when herds scattered and hunting became difficult? The evidence remains uncertain, but the question continues to echo, much like the howls outside. The sound rises again. This time several voices join together, forming a layered chorus. The storm carries much of it away, yet enough remains to suggest that the pack is large. Inside, however, the response stays calm. A woman draws her child closer. Another places a small stick onto the embers, guiding the flames higher. These are not actions of panic. They are routine. Wolves howl. Fire grows stronger. Bodies move closer together. This quiet ritual of response is as old as the lodge itself. You pull your blanket tighter and sense the atmosphere shift slightly. Fear does not dominate here, alertness does. A man near the entrance adjusts his bedding so that his bow lies within easy reach. A knife catches the firelight briefly before resting beside his hand. The balance is clear, trust in the shelter, combined with readiness for whatever waits outside. One unusual note from a fur trader describes how, on nights like these, adults sometimes told children that the howls were not threats but stories traveling on the wind. The wolves are singing too, they would say, turning fear into sound that resembled music. Perhaps that was kindness. Or perhaps it carried a deeper truth, that every living creature sings to the storm, humans no less than wolves. The fire crackles louder, pushing shadows back across the lodge. Smoke rises slowly, carrying your thoughts upward. You picture the wolves beyond the snowbanks, their muzzles lifted into the storm, their eyes faintly glowing in the swirling white. They also gather close for warmth. They depend on their pack just as this family depends on one another. In that moment, the connection becomes clearer, a group of voices calling out against the cold, while inside the lodge another group breathes and murmurs together. Scholars continue to discuss whether the presence of wolves shaped human habits during winter. Some suggest it encouraged stronger community bonds, nightly watchfulness, and a deep respect for fire as protection. Others argue that wolves were simply background noise rather than central figures in daily life. Listening tonight, you wonder whether the truth lies somewhere between danger and safety. Perhaps their presence simply reminded people that life always balanced on a narrow edge. For a moment the howling fades, swallowed again by the storm. Inside, breathing slows and shoulders relax. You notice how quickly the mind adapts. What first startled you now feels woven into the pattern of the night. Wolves howl. Snow falls. Fire burns. People sleep. The rhythm continues without interruption. You close your eyes as the sounds blend together, the soft hiss of snow against hides, the quiet growl of the dog, the faint creak of wooden poles, and somewhere beyond them the fading echoes of wild voices. Fear slowly softens into understanding. The storm does not belong to you alone. Wolves must face it as well. They must endure it and survive until morning. So you settle deeper into the furs, letting the storm and the wolves keep their distant duet outside while the lodge holds you safely within. Danger exists, but so does protection, and between those two realities, sleep eventually arrives. Gradually the wolves' voices fade into the distance, and the blizzard once again becomes the dominant sound. You shift slightly, pulling the fur closer around your shoulders. The fire now burns as a quiet circle of embers. Yet another detail catches your attention, how every person here remains wrapped in layers, almost like small fires of warmth themselves. It is well known that layered clothing was not only used during the day but also served as nightwear during storms. There were no soft pajamas or factory-made quilts. Instead, warmth came from practical garments worn continuously, designed to face the harsh realities of winter. Instead, people slept in the same deer skin or elk hide garments they wore outdoors, often treated with oils to keep them soft and flexible. Each layer acted like an extra shield against the cold. At night, these clothes were not removed, they were embraced as part of sleep. Surprisingly, there was a lot of creativity involved. Moccasins were sometimes filled with dried grass, functioning like socks to prevent toes from stiffening in frost. Children were swaddled in small robes made from rabbit pelts, light, yet remarkably warm. Instead of one large blanket, families layered several smaller hides over themselves, allowing adjustments through the night depending on the fire's warmth. Anthropologists still debate just how comfortable these garments were. Did people enjoy the feel of smoked, oiled buckskin, or simply tolerated stiffness? Some accounts describe clothing as soft, nearly luxurious. Others emphasize weight and odor, more armor than comfort. The reality likely lies in between, wearable protection that, compared to the storm outside, was indeed comforting despite rough edges. You lift your arm, feeling the weight of a robe across your chest. It carries faint scents of smoke and tallow, and a deeper earthy aroma from the animal itself. Pulling it tighter, you hear the rustle of fur against fur, a quiet reassurance. Less known is that people sometimes rubbed fat or oil on exposed skin before bed, forming a barrier against biting, drying air. Children squirmed as mothers smeared tallow on their cheeks, the sheen glinting in the firelight. Strange at first, but in the morning, their skin remained uncracked. A bedtime ritual that was both practical and gentle. A cold draft at your feet makes you grateful for the layers. Wrapping your toes in fur, you imagine the agony of bare feet on frozen ground. Here, warmth seeps back slowly, thanks to the clever design of clothing doubling as bedding. Experts also note that heavy robes and stiff furs influence sleep posture. They encouraged curling, knees tucked, arms drawn in to retain body heat. Others suggest flexibility, stretching when the fire was strong, curling tighter as embers waned. Either way, the storm shaped not just attire, but sleep itself. The lodge smells stronger now, fur warmed by fire, leather smoky and rich, human breath adding a faint sweetness. Resting your head, the scent of deer skin near your cheek becomes oddly comforting. It is not perfume or linen, but the smell of survival. One trader once recorded seeing a host sleep layered in 3 full outfits: leggings, tunic, robe, cloak, and wrapped in 2 buffalo hides. A fortress of clothing, he called it, half in awe, half in envy. You can picture it, a human fortress, layered like the lodge walls themselves. Scholars debate whether such layers caused overheating by the fire. Some report waking in sweat and adjusting garments. Others say fires were kept low at night to maintain balance. The truth likely varied with firekeepers' judgment and the storm's severity. You shift slightly, feeling the robes press against your skin, heavy yet protective. The storm rages outside, but inside, you are defended. Each stitch was crafted by patient hands, often women who spent months scraping, softening, sewing, and decorating. The warmth you enjoy tonight is the result of their labor. Looking around, you see figures mounded under furs. Children's noses peek out, red-cheeked but content. Elders snore faintly, faces shiny from rubbed oils. Together, they appear carved from the storm, wrapped in animals once hunted, now guardians of the night. You think of your thin cotton pajamas at home and laugh softly. Against the storm, they would be useless. Here, every robe, pelt, and scrap of fur is a soft armor. You draw your layers closer, entering the cocoon perfected by countless winters. The storm scratches outside, but cannot reach beneath these hides. Sleep approaches, steady as the fire's rhythm, heavy as the furs. The fire flares briefly, then settles. In the pause between gusts, voices rise, not song, but stories. A low, steady tone threads through the lodge. Perhaps a grandmother's voice begins a tale older than the storm itself. Among Plains tribes, storytelling was nightly, but during blizzards, it became essential. Stories distracted children, shared knowledge, and reminded everyone that even relentless storms were only chapters in larger cycles. Tonight, words form another blanket, draped across minds rather than bodies. These tales were vivid, not dry. Gestures and sound effects brought them to life. A raised hand might become a wolf's head, a slap on the thigh could echo hoofbeats. Children watched, wide-eyed, giggling despite the storm, drawn into worlds that made their own hardships feel smaller. Scholars still debate whether storytelling was primarily sacred or entertainment. Perhaps it was both, soothing, teaching, and connecting ancestral memories simultaneously. The elder's voice rises, dips, grows gravelly when portraying a trickster, then softens as a spirit. Firelight responds, flaring and dimming in sync. Even you lean forward, caught in the spell. The storm outside feels part of the performance, nature providing a soundscape. Some families reserved storm-only stories for nights when travel was impossible. These tales featured snow beasts, winds with personalities, or ancestors braving similar blizzards. Calm nights would lessen their impact, but storms made them immediate mirrors of the present. You can almost hear one now, a snow spirit roaring across the plains, tricked by hunters or soothed by sacred fire. Children shift under furs, fear replaced by fascination. One clutches a mother's sleeve, eyes wide, laughing as the trickster stumbles. Another hides under a robe during suspense, peeking out when the elder's voice softens again. Fear, curiosity, and humor blend like ingredients in pemmican, sustaining hearts just as food sustains bodies. Some ethnographers argue that these nights of shared storytelling reinforced identity more than feasts or councils ever could. Everyone listened, learned, and laughed together. When storms halted hunting and delayed journeys, culture itself became nourishment. Others suggest that stories were simply humans filling the silence indoors with words. Perhaps both are true, but tonight, the weight of these tales feels undeniable. These stories are more than casual chatter, they are survival in narrative form. The lodge seems smaller as the story deepens. Outside, the storm rages, but all eyes stay fixed on the storyteller. Shadows lean closer. Dogs twitch their ears. Even the fire seems to pause. The tale approaches its climax, a hunter lost in the snow, a guiding spirit leading him home, and the listeners exhale as if they themselves have walked the path. Relief spreads, laughter follows, and tension melts like frost under morning light. One observer, a settler spending a stormy night with a native family, admitted he understood not a word of their language, yet felt utterly captivated, lulled by the rhythm of the storyteller's voice. He wrote that even the storm seemed to quiet, listening along. You feel it too, the words flow like a stream, carrying you, even if you do not grasp every stone in its bed. Modern scholars debate whether these tales changed over time or remained intact. Did outsiders alter tone and content, or did families guard them fiercely, passing them on unchanged? Likely both. Stories adapt, yet their roots endure. Tonight, those roots hold firm against the storm's pull. Closing your eyes, you let the cadence wash over you, shaping images of animals running across snowy plains, spirits leaning near, and fires that never die. Storms that might bring despair become classrooms of memory, where every gust becomes part of a lesson. The elder's voice lowers, fades, and a pause holds the room. Murmurs rise. Children whisper questions. Adults chuckle softly. Another story may follow, or perhaps silence is enough. Either way, you feel steadier, wrapped not only in hides but in stories that span generations. The fire glows, smoke drifts upward, and the storm continues, yet you drift too, carried by the lingering echo of the tale. Fear softens. Time feels suspended. Sleep nudges your eyelids, and you understand. In the heart of a blizzard, words can be as warm as fire. After the story, the lodge grows quiet. Embers glow red like watchful eyes. You realize the flames are more than light or heat, they hold a reverence beyond practicality. In the storm's hush, people glance at the fire as if acknowledging something sacred. Among many plains peoples, fire was a companion, tended as if alive. It symbolized continuity, ancestral presence, and the link between the earthly and the spiritual. Tonight, that truth is clear in every careful adjustment of the embers. Sometimes, fire was even spoken to, a whispered word before adding a stick, a murmur of thanks afterward. Early visitors found this baffling, but to those inside, it was natural, like speaking to a respected elder. Fire heard, remembered, protected. Scholars remain divided on how formal these rituals were. Some describe structured ceremonies, others see the reverence folded into everyday life, invisible to outsiders. Perhaps both were true, varying by family. Tonight, the fire feels both tool and spirit, storms opposite yet equal. The storm rattles the lodge, but the flame responds with a crackle that feels like defiance. Leaning closer, its glow brushes your face. Shadows flicker behind you like spirits dancing along the hides. Some rituals included offerings, food or herbs dropped into the fire, not for cooking but as tribute. A pinch of fat, a sprig of sage, a few berries. The scent rose, mingling with the storm, carrying messages skyward. Even now, it lingers, invisible but present. The elder adjusts a stick, sparks leap, the room brightens. Faces turn toward the flames, reflecting light in their eyes. For a moment, the storm vanishes. The lodge becomes its own world, with fire at its center. Anthropologists debate whether fire in winter lodges acted as daily ceremony or practical anchor with occasional sacred meaning. Was every storm night ritual, or did reverence intensify only under harsh conditions? The line may be thinner than modern thought allows. Survival itself can be sacred. Smoke curls, filling the air. You inhale, coughing slightly, yet it feels part of the rhythm. The fire carries warmth and a message. We are alive, together, enduring. Each spark reinforces this truth. A fur trader once described a brutal blizzard where a family fed twigs into the fire one at a time, murmuring words he could not translate. He assumed it was prayer. What struck him was their calm. Though the storm raged, the family believed that as long as the flame endured, they would too. Snow drifts through the smoke hole, vanishing instantly into the heat. Fire swallows the storm. Endless snow, rising fire, and life suspended between. Scholars debate whether these symbolic fires were kept burning continuously or rekindled at each stop. Some suggest coals traveled carefully, wrapped in ash and hide. Perhaps tonight's fire descends from one lit weeks or months ago, carried across the plains like a heartbeat in a pouch. Dogs stir at the entrance, children murmur in half-dreams, adults shift under furs, but all feel the fire's presence. It is a companion never forgotten. Outside, the storm shrieks, yet the fire crackles steadily. You stare, hypnotized. Shapes leap and vanish in the flames. Faces, animals, shadows of earlier stories. You move with its rhythm, aware that this dance has soothed countless people before you. Fire as teacher, fire as healer, fire as memory. You lean back, warmed not just in body, but in spirit. The storm may claw and roar outside, yet the sacred flame responds, steady and unwavering. You close your eyes, silently speaking to the embers as others have done before. Guard us, hold us, carry us through the night. As the storm grows louder, the fire's glow shifts, steady yet moving with each gust that shakes the lodge. Its warmth seeps into your bones. But it is the flickering shadows that capture your attention. For a moment, they seem to play across the walls, forming shapes, faces, animals, figures, that elude definition. In this light, everything feels fluid, as if the flames themselves are alive, sharing stories only the shadows can tell. Glancing around the lodge, you see families huddled close. The rhythm of breathing fills the space, interrupted only by the occasional crackle of fire or the rustle of blankets. Inside is warmer than outside, but the true comfort comes from shared presence. People are close enough to feel each other's breath, hear each other's whispers. The thin walls shield not just from cold, but from isolation. In a storm, this connection is as vital as the fire itself. Historical accounts confirm that the teepee's design encouraged this closeness. Its circular shape, central fire, and single entrance drew everyone to the heart of the lodge. This proximity fostered unity, helping families endure harsh winters together. The teepee was more than shelter, it was a space for shared experience and resilience. Surprisingly, nights inside were often profoundly quiet. The storm could rage outside, but inside there was serenity, not born of fear, but of acceptance. Families trusted the lodge and fire to protect them through the worst weather. Early travelers noted that warmth was not the only comfort. Shared stories, laughter, and even tears created a living energy inside. The lodge seemed to respond to the people within, offering both emotional and spiritual shelter. Anthropologists suggest that this shared space was essential to survival. In harsh winters, cooperation mattered. The teepee's design reinforced mutual care and closeness. By remaining together, families endured not only the storm, but the emotional weight of winter. Tonight, as the fire dims and shadows stretch, you sense the weight of history. This space has witnessed generations, people laughing, crying, resting as storms raged outside. The lodge held them, supported them, and offered peace. A soft creak from the hide draws you back. You adjust slightly, careful not to disturb the dog curled at your feet. Its breathing is steady, a quiet companion in the storm. The scent of its fur mixes with the smoky aroma of the fire. Comfort now comes not just from warmth or blankets, but from the presence of those around you. Even the dog is part of the circle of protection. Children sleep scattered across the floor, wrapped in furs or nestled under parents' arms. Their gentle breaths rise and fall in time with the fire's flicker. The storm howls outside, yet life inside moves steadily. The elders keep watch, the children sleep, and the fire continues to burn. Some scholars debate whether such close quarters shaped family dynamics. Did intimacy strengthen bonds or spark conflict? Opinions vary, yet tonight, the connection is undeniable. The closeness is a gift, helping families survive centuries of winter storms. You drift further into warmth, letting the surrounding sounds merge into background hum. The fire crackles softly. The wind rattles the hide walls. Breaths continue their steady rhythm. There is a peace here, a peace born from not being alone, not just now, but across countless nights that came before. Early settlers observed that in particularly harsh winters, the sense of community inside the teepee intensified. They described it as a collective pulse, a shared rhythm of survival. Tonight, you feel that pulse again. Quiet, strong, holding the lodge together. Outside, the storm presses relentlessly, but inside, calm prevails. The shared space, the fire, the stories, the presence of those who endured storms before, all form a force that steadies the night. You close your eyes, wrapped in the lodge's rhythm. You are held not only by warmth or clothing, but by the continuity of life around you. The fire may fade, the storm may rage, yet here, you are safe and not alone. The storm hammers, snow presses, and poles creak like an old ship, but a realization emerges. The storm itself is part of the night's lullaby. Plains dwellers learned to hear patterns in the weather. Ethnographers note that blizzards became familiar music. Families rested to its rhythm. Lying with half-closed eyes, you begin to hear it too, not a scream, but a drumbeat of snow. Travelers recount that children, initially fearful, would listen to the gale and fall asleep, soothed as if rocked by the storm itself. For them, the sound was not unfamiliar but anticipated, a lullaby offered by nature itself. You listen closely, noticing the changes. One gust low and rough, another high and sharp. The storm speaks in many tones, and oddly you feel calm. Scholars remain divided over whether such sounds encouraged sleep or provoked anxiety. Some diaries describe restless nights, the noise too intense to ignore. Others insist that people became so accustomed to the blizzard's voice that silence felt stranger than sound. Likely, both were true. Initial fear, followed by acceptance, until the howling became the background of survival. A lesser-known tradition involved elders teaching children to respond to the storm, not with defiance, but with soft murmurs, joining the wind's song. This practice transformed fear into participation, showing that even in harsh conditions, humans could contribute a voice rather than retreat in silence. You imagine children whispering quietly as snow rattled the poles, turning a threat into a companion. Listening again, the sound reveals layers. Close to the lodge, you hear flakes striking hides. Beyond that, the wind sweeps across drifts, and farther still, a low moan rises from bending trees and groaning earth. Together, these form a symphony, not comforting at first, but constant, like waves against a shore, like a heartbeat. The storm repeats, over and over, and repetition is the foundation of sleep. The fire pops softly, providing a counterpoint. Shadows flicker across the walls, moving with the gust's rhythm. Even the poles seem to join, creaking as if striking notes. Closing your eyes, the soundscape surrounds you, a natural orchestra that no silence could replace. Anthropologists debate whether this adaptation shaped cultural attitudes toward hardship. Did perceiving the storm as music make endurance easier, even noble? Did it transform survival into something embraced rather than merely endured? No consensus exists, yet tonight, lulled by the rhythm, you sense the answer is yes. A fur trader once described his first night in a lodge during a blizzard. He could not sleep, heart racing with every gust. By dawn, he noticed the family around him slept peacefully, unaffected by the noise. "They have ears tuned to snow," he wrote in awe. You reflect on that, ears trained across generations to find calm amid chaos. Children shift, sighing, their bodies heavy with sleep. An elder murmurs something indistinct, then settles, comforted by the rhythm. Even the dogs, previously alert, now rest, chests rising in sync with the wind. The storm is no longer an intruder, it is the lodge's heartbeat. Your own body adjusts too. At first, you tensed, alert for danger, but gradually the storm's constancy convinces you, this is not a threat. This is life. Shoulders relax. Breath aligns with the gusts. The blizzard becomes your lullaby. Scholars continue to debate how people interpreted these sounds. Some describe them as spirits singing, others as the earth's anger. Perhaps both were true, depending on the storm and the listener. Tonight, for you, the sound is neither spirit nor wrath, it is rhythm. And rhythm, steady and repeating, invites sleep. The wind rattles harder. Snow hisses. Poles groan. Embers spark. Yet you are no longer startled. You are cradled. The lodge rocks faintly, as if a cradle. The storm that once threatened now serves as a caretaker. You breathe deeply, inhaling smoke and fur, letting the layers of sound wash over you. Each gust is a verse, each creak a refrain, each hiss a note. The storm continues, relentless, but you are part of its music. Eyes closed, you surrender, knowing no silence could feel sweeter than this thunderous lullaby. Within the lodge, the night softens. The fire hums low, the wind's rhythm blends into background music. Yet not all moments are solemn. In flickering shadows, children stir, not yet surrendered to sleep. Historical records note that stormy nights often combined play with rest, especially in early hours. Confined indoors, children turned canvas walls into a stage, laughter echoing against hides while wind rattled and growled outside. Their games were inventive. One child waves a stick near the fire, casting dancing shadows. Another claps hands to chase these shapes, as if hunting phantom animals. Younger children giggle, crawl under blankets, reappear dramatically, drawing quiet laughter from adults. For them, the storm is not danger but a backdrop for imagination. Ethnographers debate whether this play was allowed or restricted. Some accounts suggest strict silence was expected once fires dimmed. Others describe encouragement, laughter as a defense against fear. Evidence varies. Likely every family had its own rules. Tonight you sense indulgence. Adults smile softly, too tired to scold, appreciating joy amid the storm. Children even played with drifting snow. Flakes entering through smoke holes or seams were scooped up, sparkling in firelight. One traveler recorded kids catching snowflakes on their tongues, much like modern children. Tiny bursts of wonder persisted even as wolves howled and snow threatened the lodge outside. The fire crackles, a child tosses a wood sliver, drawing a quiet chuckle from an elder. Flames leap, shadows stretch, and the lodge seems alive, filled with dancing spirits conjured by imagination and fire. You lean back, listening as chatter blends with the blizzard's steady pulse. Experts argue these moments were vital for resilience. Long winters could breed monotony and fear. Laughter reminded families life was more than survival. Others note adults might have needed quiet for rest and strength for the day ahead. Even in debate, both sides recognize play had its place. A missionary recounted his first night in a storm-bound lodge, expecting quiet. Children spent an hour making shadow puppets, a bison, a deer, filling the lodge with warmth beyond what fire could offer. You smile at the thought, joy as insulation, laughter as protection. The dog at your feet lifts its head, ears flicking as the children run and laugh, then settles again, sighing as if resigned to the noise. Adults shift on their bedding. Some watch with fondness, others half asleep, but no one seems truly annoyed. The storm outside rages relentlessly, yet inside life continues with a balance of play and quiet reflection. What surprises you is how natural it feels. Even you, weary from the constant hiss of snow, find yourself smiling as shadows dance along the walls. The storm becomes background noise, overtaken by the lightness of children's voices. For a brief moment, you remember that survival is not just about enduring. It is also about living fully, even joyfully, in the harshest conditions. Some scholars debate whether these childhood games left lasting memories, shaping cultural stories later in life. Did elders recall fondly the nights spent making shadows on hides while blizzards raged outside? Did these memories soften the harshness of hardships in the stories they passed on? Evidence is uncertain, yet tonight, as you watch, you feel certain they would. How could a child forget laughter glowing against the dark storm? The fire dims, and gradually the energy in the lodge shifts. Children tire, Voices soften, movements slow. One curls into a blanket like a small pup. Another leans against a mother's shoulder, eyes heavy, smile still faintly there. The play ends not with scolding, but naturally, as sleep draws them in. Laughter fades into quiet, movement into stillness, light into shadow. The storm continues, yet inside, peace returns. Adults pull hides closer, sharing warmth. The lodge breathes again, calm, unified. You, still warmed by the memory of laughter, feel your own eyes grow heavy. You realize then that survival during storms was never just fire and fur, food and prayer. It was also joy, small, fleeting sparks glowing in the dark. Without these moments, endurance might be brittle. With them, even the fiercest storm feels less absolute. You let yourself drift, carrying laughter into dreams. The blizzard may roar, but in memory, shadows dance and children's laughter remains bright against the storm. Children's laughter fades into deep breaths, games dissolving into dreams. The fire hums in its cradle of embers, while the storm outside continues its relentless rhythm. In this calm, another presence emerges, less visible but just as powerful: dreams. Among many native communities, dreams were never idle. They were meaningful, sometimes messages, visions, or instructions from beyond ordinary life. On nights like this, when storm and survival pressed so near, closing your eyes meant opening to guidance that could shape choices by morning. Families treated blizzard dreams with particular respect. Elders believed that such nights thinned the veil between the waking and spirit worlds. Dreams of snow, animals, or ancestors were not dismissed. They were shared, remembered, and sometimes acted upon. You imagine someone waking quietly, whispering of a vision, a herd moving east, a fire burning brighter than usual. Others listen carefully, nodding, interpreting the symbols. Scholars debate whether these dreams were literal or metaphorical. Some accounts suggest hunters altered plans based on visions of buffalo paths or warnings. Others argue the dreams were part of storytelling traditions, valued for teaching rather than practical action. The line between metaphor and instruction blurs, leaving ongoing discussion among researchers. A lesser-known observation comes from a fur trader who recorded hosts sharing dreams at dawn. One man spoke of a white bird flying across the storm, another of his late father's voice calling from the snow. The trader dismissed it as superstition, yet the family discussed these dreams with seriousness, as if deciding where to hunt. You shift in your bedding, sleep pressing against your eyelids. Waves of dreams carry you, images of children flying above the storm, a mother weaving snow into cloth, a hunter crossing a white plain where buffalo hooves silently thunder. Dreams as survival. Dreams as inheritance. Dreams as maps in the dark. The storm outside amplifies the feeling that something larger is speaking. Its howl is almost like a voice, its rhythm like a chant. You begin to see why visions from nights like this were treated with gravity. The natural world was not mere background. It actively shaped what minds saw and felt. Anthropologists note that sharing dreams strengthened community bonds. Morning discussions turned personal visions into collective experience. Others suggest dreams remained private, shared only when profound. Likely, both were true, sometimes intimate, sometimes communal, depending on the dream's weight. Tonight, even the smallest vision might be remembered at dawn, spoken softly, considered carefully. Early missionary accounts describe families placing sacred items, medicine bundles, feathers, carved charms, beside sleepers. These objects were believed to guide dreams toward clarity or protection. You notice one laid neatly beside an elder, quiet but firm, reminding sleep to be meaningful. The fire sighs, smoke curling through the smoke hole. You close your eyes, surrendering to the rhythm of the storm. Images flicker behind your eyelids. Snow swirling, animal eyes gleaming, distant voices calling. You drift, half in the lodge, half beyond, joining centuries of dreamers seeking guidance on nights like this. Scholars continue to debate how dreams shaped history. Did they redirect hunts or migrations? Or were they just one more piece of evidence in decision-making? Records vary, but perhaps the effect matters more than literal truth. Dreams gave shape to uncertainty, offering meaning when the world seemed endless and harsh. Even the dreams echo the lodge's rhythm. The blizzard howls, the fire flickers, and in half-sleep, you feel part of the same pattern. Your breath joins the storm, your visions the lineage of others. Sleep becomes communal survival. A dog shifts at your feet, tail thumping softly, dreaming perhaps of hunts. Children murmur, elders stir and settle. The lodge becomes a chamber of dreams. Each sleeper weaving their thread, yet all connected by the storm's loom. You exhale slowly, letting images swirl without fear. Dreams are invitations, not intrusions. Each carries meaning, a reminder that survival is more than enduring bodies. It is minds reaching beyond the storm. You drift fully, surrendering to dreams as conversations, not illusions. The storm roars, the fire breathes, visions flicker. You accept them as part of the night's shelter. The lodge is thick with sleep, yet subtle movements remind you that not every presence inside is human. At your feet, warmth presses gently against your ankles. You look down and notice a dog curled tightly, nose tucked under its tail, its fur rising and falling with steady breaths, while the storm rages outside. Yet, the presence of this animal offers a different kind of comfort, familiar, instinctive, almost timeless. Dogs were long-standing companions in plains camps. They were valued not only for carrying loads and guarding perimeters but also for providing warmth during long winter nights. Families didn't push them away when storms hit. They brought them inside the lodge, where their thick coats and loyal presence added to the night's insulation. What may surprise you is how fully these animals became part of family life. Children slept beside them like siblings, draping their hands over tails or leaning against their shaggy sides. Elders sometimes rested their backs against a dog's steady heat, while hunters who depended on them during the day trusted them at night to alert the lodge to any approaching danger. The companionship was both practical and tender. Historians are divided on dogs' roles before horses transformed the plains. Some argue that they were primarily beasts of burden, pulling travois and carrying goods. Others stress their role as spiritual companions and lodge guardians. The truth likely encompasses both perspectives. They carried loads by day and the weight of comfort by night. A lesser-known note from a trader's diary describes dogs, welcomed into lodges, burrowing beneath blankets or hides with children. A more faithful quilt than any fabric, he wrote, half envious, half amused. You can picture it, two small figures and one furry body tangled together, indistinguishable in the dim firelight. The dog at your feet shifts, stretches briefly, then curls tighter, its warmth seeping into your legs, an immediate comfort no fire could fully replicate. In a storm where every degree of warmth counts, shared body heat could mean the difference between comfort and misery. A missionary once noted that dogs were believed to sense spirits more sharply than humans. Their sudden growls or restless pacing at night might signal not just wolves, but unseen presences. Tonight, when the dog lifts its head, ears pricked, you feel a shiver. It listens briefly, then settles again, as if deciding the threat isn't worth alarming others. The fire pops, sparks rise, and the dog's scent, faintly of meat from earlier scraps, mingles with smoke and tallow, another layer in the night's atmosphere. You brush your fingers through its fur, coarse on top, softer underneath. It does not stir, yet the faint vibration of trust radiates from its stillness. Some anthropologists suggest this closeness was more than companionship, it was partnership, each species relying equally on the other. Others caution against romanticizing, noting dogs were sometimes eaten during famine. Both realities may have coexisted, survival entwined with love, reliance, and sacrifice. You notice how much calmer you feel with the dog nearby. The storm hasn't eased, the cold hasn't lessened, yet the presence of this creature reduces tension. It is a reminder that survival has never been solely human. From the earliest fires onward, people and animals endured together. Tonight, that truth rests against your legs, breathing steadily, providing silent warmth. Children stir in sleep, one rolling closer to another dog curled by the fire. Their hands find fur instinctively, faces relaxing. The animals remain still, aware of their role in the storm's long hours. Guardians, companions, heaters, dream partners. Scholars debate whether this bond shaped cultural values like loyalty and kinship. Did living alongside creatures who guarded, carried, and warmed families reinforce ideals of cooperation? Or were dogs simply integrated into survival structures? The answer lingers, but tonight, it feels clear. Kinship is built not only on blood but on shared nights like this. The storm hammers harder, snow piling high, yet you feel secure. The dog growls softly once, then relaxes, ears twitching, body pressed close. Closing your eyes, you are grateful for its warmth and silent vigilance. Survival here relies on layered hides, fire, snow, clothing, stories, dreams, and yes, dogs. Each alone may not suffice, but together they create a refuge against the storm. You brush its fur once more, whispering thanks. The dog seems to respond, and sleep comes more easily. As the storm rages outside, the dog curled tight beside you, you recognize a truth. Companionship is its own kind of fire. The dog's warmth anchors you, yet another reality emerges. People here never slept unarmed. Your gaze drifts to the lodge edges, where shadows half-conceal tools kept deliberately within reach, bows leaning against poles, knives nearby, spears propped in the soft glow of embers. These objects are silent guardians. Explorers' journals confirm that weapons were rarely stored far away, especially during storms. Danger came not only from weather but from animals, raiders, or accidents under heavy snow. Resting without tools would have been unthinkable. Ordinary objects served extraordinary purposes. A bow was not just a hunting tool but a bedside necessity, like a flashlight today. Knives were handled as routinely as spoons, practical, never ornamental. During storms, when wolves circled or rival groups might strike, vigilance meant protection was always within reach. Historians debate whether these weapons were primarily for animal defense or human threats. Some accounts emphasize wolves and bears, others highlight raids. Both were likely true, with storms creating vulnerable moments when readiness mattered most. A fur trader recorded a night when a buffalo calf, panicked by a storm, ran into a camp. Sleepers awoke instantly, weapons in hand, ready for danger. When they realized it was only a calf, they laughed, but reflexes had already taken over. Survival demanded immediacy. The fire casts long shadows over blades and shafts. You observe the simple beauty of each tool, the curve of wood, the shine of stone, the careful bindings. Every knife, every bow, represents labor, skill, and tradition. A knife is more than a tool, it is the culmination of centuries of knowledge. One missionary even noted that children practiced with small bows inside lodges when storms prevented outdoor play. Arrows tipped with softened wood or bone bounced harmlessly off hides, drawing quiet chuckles from parents who tolerated the noise. Even in play, they had to be ready, the missionary noted, half critical, half impressed. You can picture it now, children aiming at flickering shadows, training their hands while storms raged outside. Some anthropologists suggest that this constant presence of weapons blurred the line between war and peace. To outsiders, it might have seemed like paranoia, but for those who lived here, it was simple pragmatism. Storms gave no warning. Predators never announced themselves. Survival required readiness. Others argue that these weapons also held deep symbolic meaning. Objects of identity, reminders of lineage, proofs of skill. You shift slightly on your bedding, comforted by knowing these tools are within reach. Though the lodge is quiet, a subtle aura of preparedness hums in the air. Sleep here is not helplessness, it is trust in both the people beside you and the weapons nearby. The storm lashes harder, and you imagine wolves nosing through snow drifts or rival scouts waiting for a weakness. The thought chills you, but then you glance at the bows, knives, and spears and understand why no one stirs in panic. Preparedness itself is a kind of comfort. What surprises you further is how calm this atmosphere feels. The weapons do not radiate aggression but steadiness. They exist not to provoke, but to end fear. Like the fire, the dogs, and the hides, they form part of a layered defense that allows sleep. A scholar once wrote that the teepee at night is both cradle and armory. Tonight you finally understand. Babies sleep inches from sharpened stone. Elders dream beside spears taller than themselves. Yet all is calm. These tools do not disturb rest. They enable it. The fire crackles, sending one last spark upward. A man near the entrance stirs, brushing his hand along a spear before settling again. The gesture is automatic, unconscious, like pulling a blanket higher. You realize then that readiness is a lullaby. When danger is expected, it does not paralyze. The storm continues, merciless, but you close your eyes knowing the balance is maintained. Around you are hides, furs, family, dogs, and fire. And within reach, the sharp edge of human resilience. Sleep returns, steady and sure, protected by more than walls. The lodge settles into its slow rhythm, fire whispering, sleepers breathing, storm growling. Yet in the dimness, your eyes are drawn to another presence. Near the bedding of an elder, a small bundle wrapped carefully in cloth and tied with leather rests, almost like a pillow of secrets. Medicine bundles held deep importance in many native cultures. These were not casual collections of herbs or trinkets. They were sacred objects carrying prayers, memories, and protective power. Each bundle was unique, sometimes containing stones, feathers, claws, roots, or personal items tied to visions and ceremonies. Keeping a bundle close during sleep invited its guardianship into dreams. What might surprise you is how personal these bundles were. No two were alike, and their contents were rarely shared openly. Some were family heirlooms, passed across generations. Others were deeply individual, created after a vision quest or sacred encounter. On stormy nights, placing one beside the pillow drew a circle of unseen strength around the sleeper. Scholars debate whether these bundles were primarily spiritual shields or practical kits. Some records emphasize ritual and prayer, while others note herbs for coughs, fevers, or frostbite, tools for both healing and faith. Likely, they blended both, medicine for the body and the spirit in one small package. A lesser-known account from an early explorer recalls entering a lodge where every sleeper had something near their head, from simple feathers to elaborate wrappings. When he asked about them, his hosts refused detailed explanation, saying only that they were for protection. He left baffled. What he witnessed was a community of sleepers, each guarded by unseen allies. You glance again at the elder's bundle. Its cloth glimmers faintly in the firelight, edges frayed from years of handling. You wonder what lies inside, perhaps a smooth river stone, dried sage wrapped in hide, or something no outsider could guess. Its mystery feels powerful. An unusual anecdote comes from a missionary who described storms where families sprinkled tobacco or herbs onto embers before sleeping, invoking the bundle's spirit to carry prayers into smoke. Tonight, you almost smell that faint sweetness mingling with storm air. Some anthropologists argue these objects provided psychological comfort, anchoring families against winter terrors. Others claim their power was literal, shaping events and shielding sleepers. The debate continues, but perhaps both miss a simple truth: belief itself can be medicine. To feel protected is to feel safe, and in a storm, that safety is invaluable. The dog beside you shifts, tail brushing your leg. Its warmth and watchfulness are tangible. The bundle near the elder's head offers an intangible warmth. Survival here depends not just on hides, fire, or food, but spirit. Enduring endless winters required fortifying both body and soul. What surprises you further is how naturally these layers coexist. A knife for defense, a fur for warmth, a bundle for protection. They do not contradict. They interweave, forming a web strong enough to support sleep even as the storm rages. The elder stirs, perhaps sensing your gaze. He touches the bundle lightly before turning onto his side, a gesture tender and instinctive. It is not superstition but relationship. Just as children lean into parents and dogs curl beside sleepers, so do people rest against the unseen guardians of their bundles. The fire pops, sparks rise, and smoke swirls, carrying prayers whispered earlier. You inhale deeply, scents of wood, hide, tallow, and something herbal, as if the bundle perfumes the air. Some researchers believe dreams were shaped by these objects. Sleeping beside a bundle could invite visions aligned with healing or guidance. Did hunters dream of herds because of stones tied to buffalo hunts? Did mothers dream of ancestors because feathers brushed their faces? No one can prove it, but the possibility lingers like smoke in the rafters. You close your eyes, imagining your own bundle, perhaps a river stone, cool and grounding, a feather from a long walk, a scrap of hide from a faithful dog. Simple objects, heavy with meaning. The storm hammers again, snow slamming against the walls, but the lodge holds steady. Around you, people are wrapped not only in furs but in faith. While the fire warms bodies, these quiet bundles warm the unseen spaces, hearts, minds, spirits. You shift onto your side, listening as the wind shrieks and the poles groan, soothed by the rhythm of the lodge. The bundle near the elder remains still, yet its presence fills the room as surely as the glow of the fire. You close your eyes, comforted by that unseen protection. Sleep gathers you again, wrapped in warmth both tangible and unseen. The storm may batter hides and poles, but it cannot breach the circle formed by objects of meaning, kept close beside pillows tied to the spirit of survival. Slowly, the storm's rage begins to ease as dawn approaches. You sense the change before you see it. The wind softens, the rattling against the hides becomes less frantic, and snow falls in gentler sheets rather than blinding walls. Inside the lodge, sleepers begin to stir. The night has been endured, and morning rituals await. It is well documented that many Plains families began each day, even after the harshest nights, with acts of gratitude. Elders rose first, tending the fire and quietly thanking the spirits who had protected the family through the storm. This was not for show, but an instinctive acknowledgement that survival itself was a gift. Mornings blended practicality with spirituality seamlessly. While one elder added wood to the embers, another might whisper a prayer. As a mother adjusted hides to let in fresh air, she might softly speak to the fire, honoring its persistence. Gratitude and maintenance were one act. Anthropologists remain divided on whether these routines were formal rituals or informal habits passed down naturally. Some argue that set prayers and gestures marked each dawn, while others suggest gratitude was spontaneous, shaped by individual families. Likely, both occurred, a mix of ritual and instinct, varying by tribe and circumstance. A lesser-known account from a fur trader describes waking to find snow packed tightly around a lodge, nearly burying it. Yet the inhabitants stepped outside, laughing, stretching toward the sky, greeting the sun as a friend. He was astonished by their calm after such violence. You can picture that moment now, the relief, the joy of seeing light after a night that could have ended so differently. Inside, a woman stokes the embers, coaxing the flame back to life. The crackle seems like a sigh of relief, as if the fire itself is grateful. Children rub sleep from their eyes, asking softly if the storm has passed. Dogs stretch, shake themselves, and sniff the air for signs of change. The elder who slept near the medicine bundle sits upright, hands on the cloth, lips moving in silent words of thanks for the night's protection. These rituals shape resilience profoundly. Starting each morning with gratitude, even after hardship, affirms strength rather than weakness. Some missionaries noted that families sometimes stepped outside barefoot after storms, placing feet on the snow to greet the earth. Outsiders found this shocking, yet its symbolism is clear, gratitude expressed not just in words, but in direct contact with the world that sustains and tests them. Scholars debate whether these practices were religious or psychological. Did they literally invoke spirits, or did they serve to calm minds after chaos? The answer may not matter. Survival often relies less on definitions than on practice. Gratitude, whether towards spirits or life itself, steadies the heart. You imagine stepping outside, snow crunching underfoot, dawn muffled by deep drifts. The horizon glows pale pink, reflecting off endless white. The storm has left behind stillness, almost sacred. After the roar of the night, the quiet feels like an answered prayer. Inside, food is brought down from overhead bundles. Pemmican, dried meat, perhaps a few berries. Children nibble sleepily, wrapped in furs. Adults eat quietly, already thinking ahead, checking drifts, clearing paths, scouting fallen poles. Yet even in preparation, They pause to laugh softly, speak in low tones, reminding each other of their survival. What surprises you most is how little despair remains. The storm may have stolen rest and left hazardous snowbanks, but defeat is absent. Instead, a tempered defiance emerges, softened by gratitude. Surviving the night alone reshapes the day. Light trickles through the smoke hole, golden and pale, and the air inside shifts, no longer heavy with darkness. Snow still presses against the lodge, but the storm's voice fades. The lodge breathes easier. One traveler wrote that he could not understand why people smiled at dawn after storms until he endured one himself. Morning was not guaranteed, light was not owed. Each sunrise felt like a victory, a reminder that storms may rage, but they do not last forever. The elder rises fully, carefully tucking away his bundle. Others follow, adjusting clothes, stretching limbs, murmuring softly. Outside, the world lies hushed under snow, but inside, the day begins, fire rekindled, food shared, gratitude spoken. You stretch, warmed by the recognition that life has endured another storm. The lodge's quiet strength and the resilience of its people, anchored by rituals, is evident. The storm is never the end, it is just another verse in the song of survival, always followed by dawn. Yet the storm's mark lingers. Morning fire brings warmth, but you also notice the sour tang of damp hides and the acrid smell of garments drying over flames. The blizzard left its toll. Snow crept through seams, cloaks froze stiff. Everything must be restored before venturing back into the white silence. Moisture in hides made them rigid, useless, and uncomfortable. Families carefully laid garments near fires, shifting them to dry evenly without scorching. This drying ritual was as essential as food. It required patience. Too close to the fire, hides could shrink or ignite. Too far, they remained damp and froze again. Adults sat cross-legged, stretching hides with wooden sticks or hands, turning them slowly while steam rose in faint ribbons. The lodge filled with the smell of wet leather warming, almost like a tannery. Historians debate how long this took on stormy mornings. Some accounts claim drying clothes could take hours, delaying hunting or travel. Others suggest clever preparation, oiling hides, layering furs, made the process faster. Likely, reality lay somewhere in between. Some mornings long and tedious, others efficient through careful planning. A lesser-known detail comes from an explorer who described the sound of this drying ritual. Inside the lodge, there was a symphony, hissing, snowmelt dripping onto embers, hides steaming, wood crackling, all merging into a rhythm of recovery. Listen closely, and you can still hear the faint hiss of droplets falling from a cloak hung near the fire. The scent is sharp, smoky, and unforgettable. Traders noted that children were often tasked with holding smaller items, mittens, moccasins, scarves, near the flames, learning patience as they shifted each piece carefully. More than one child received a quick scolding for placing fur too close and leaving a singe mark. Yet these lessons were crucial. Properly drying garments could be the difference between warmth and frostbite. Some anthropologists suggest this ritual was more than maintenance, it was morning therapy. After a night of relentless howling winds, the rising steam from hides reminded families that recovery was possible. Others argue it was purely practical, nothing more. Yet, watching coats soften and cloaks regain flexibility, you can sense both truths. It is survival but also reassurance. The storm may soak and freeze, yet fire and patience undo its grip. A woman carefully lays a buffalo robe across a pole, stretching and smoothing it. Her movements are practiced, each gesture repeated countless times. She hums softly, the tune blending with the hiss of drying hides. Nearby, a child mimics her, turning a small pair of moccasins with exaggerated care. The adults chuckle quietly, but the child's lesson is real. The thick smell of wet fur, smoke, and tallow fills the lodge. Unpleasant at first, it is also comforting. Every garment that dries is another layer of protection restored, another piece of armor for the next venture outside. Without them, the storm wins. With them, the family is prepared once more. What surprises further is the communal nature of the task. No one dries their clothing alone. All garments are arranged around the central fire. Children check their pieces, elders offer advice, and dogs sniff at dripping edges. The entire family participates in this quiet ritual of restoration. A missionary recorded how striking it was to witness gratitude in this act. Families murmured thanks not just to the fire but to the animals whose hides now protected them. Drying was not only about clothing, it renewed a bond. Each pelt or robe had once been a living being, and its gift was remembered as steam rose in the lodge. Scholars debate whether such respect was consistent or romanticized by later observers. Did people always pause to honor animals, or only sometimes? The records differ. Yet, watching the gentle way a robe is stretched, as if being caressed rather than handled, suggests genuine reverence. The fire burns hotter, coaxing more steam into the air. The lodge feels damp and heavy, filled with both the stench of wet fur and the sweetness of smoke. Progress is clear. Stiff garments regain suppleness, ready for another day. Adults exchange satisfied glances. Children slide warm moccasins onto their feet, wriggling their toes. The storm outside has left its mark, but inside, resilience answers. Wet hides dry, frozen coats become pliable, and spirits rise with every garment restored. The process is slow, perhaps tedious, but it proves that storms can be undone not through grand gestures but steady, patient care. You breathe deeply, letting the smoke and drying leather fill your senses. The storm has passed, the fire has endured, and the lodge repairs what the night tried to break. Survival is not just enduring storms but restoring afterward, garment by garment, task by task, until life feels whole again. The garments are nearly dry, but attention shifts to another concern, the woodpile. Logs have burned down to ash, and warmth is not infinite. In the open plains, where trees were scarce, families relied on fallen branches, driftwood, and less obvious fuels like buffalo chips, dried dung collected from herds. Far from being repulsive, they burned hot and steady, with light smoke, making them vital when wood ran out. Keeping supplies ready required effort. Children and women gathered dung in warmer months, drying it and storing it in heaps. Hunters sometimes carried bundles on journeys, ensuring fire could be sparked where no timber existed. Survival depended on humble sun-baked patties, stacked like bricks of gold. Historians differ on how plentiful fuel truly was. Some diaries describe endless shortages, with families shivering through long nights when storms made gathering impossible. Others suggest careful planning and seasonal migration kept camps well supplied. Likely, the truth lies in between. Some winters were bountiful, others harsh. Traders even recorded exchanging beads for dried dung during blizzards, a reminder that humor and survival often coexisted. The fire sputters as a thin stick is added. Adults watch the dwindling pile, weighing choices, venture into snowdrifts for more or conserve until morning. Missionaries observed families teaching children to ration fire like food. Do not make it roar when a whisper suffices. Tonight, the whisper is heard. The fire burns low, warm but efficient. Anthropologists suggest this discipline shaped cultural attitudes toward resource use. Nothing was wasted, every scrap had purpose. Others argue practicality alone drove it. Watching the fire now, just high enough to keep sleepers comfortable, you see it was both necessity and mindset. Efficiency became tradition. The scent of burning dung blends with the lodge's aromas. Dry, earthy, and almost sweet, it may seem unusual today, but to those inside, it signifies survival. People adapted creatively when supplies ran low, mixing dung with bark or animal fat to extend burn time, banking embers under ash overnight to revive at dawn. Each method stretched resources further, ensuring warmth and life endured. Each new piece added to the fire reflects careful attention. The flames flare briefly, then settle again. Families glance at it with satisfaction before returning to their tasks. Children no longer play freely. Instead, they carry small sticks or chips from storage, learning the value of every handful. Dogs sniff around briefly before curling up to rest. Life goes on, a balance of scarcity and resilience. Scholars debate whether limited firewood influenced broader migration patterns. Some argue that winter camps were chosen mainly for fuel, while others stress hunting grounds or shelter from the wind. Likely, all factors were intertwined: food, fuel, and protection, each weighed carefully before camps were set. The land dictated survival, and families listened. You stretch, feeling the warmth, aware of its cost. Each flicker recalls hours spent gathering, drying, and carrying wood. Each ember is labor made tangible. You understand why people guarded fires as if alive, treating sparks as sacred. Wasting them meant wasting effort and the promise of life. Outside, the storm may have quieted, but snow still drifts, covering paths and making gathering difficult. Inside, the fire burns smaller but steady, a heartbeat of discipline and care. You close your eyes, listening to the soft crackle, smelling the faintly sweet smoke, realizing that warmth is earned, not taken for granted. You settle deeper into your furs, grateful for each ember, each chip, each stick that keeps the storm at bay. The lodge breathes, warmed by resources gathered months ago, rationed carefully, and burned wisely. You drift into half-sleep, understanding that survival relies not just on courage, but patience and tending the fire. The storm has eased, yet another challenge remains: silence. A pressing quiet that makes the snow-covered plains feel vast and empty. You pull the fur tighter, not from cold but from the weight of stillness. The fire crackles softly, dogs shift in sleep. Outside, the world lies buried. After blizzards, the land often appeared alien. Trails vanished, landmarks disappeared under drifts, and lodges seemed like islands of snow. To step outside was to drift in a frozen sea, cut off from the world. Families knew the storm had passed, but the work of reorienting had just begun. Some sent scouts as soon as winds calmed, not to hunt, but to re-establish direction. Snow erased paths so thoroughly that without markers, stones, tree groves, or remembered hills, travel could be dangerous. Even the most experienced hunters paused, studying the horizon before taking a step. Historians debate whether families created markers during storms. Some accounts mention poles stuck upright in drifts as anchors. Others suggest reliance on memory and intuition. Survival required reading the land, even when it seemed erased. A lesser-known observation comes from an explorer, noting how storms muffled sound. Footsteps were swallowed, voices carried strangely, and the crack of a branch felt muted. To him, this was eerie. To locals, it was simply the land speaking, a reminder that storms reshaped sight and sound alike. Inside the lodge, the tension of silence settles. Adults stir, preparing to go outside, while children cling to blankets, reluctant to leave warmth. Dogs whine softly, eager to explore beyond the walls. The elder stretches, bones cracking like the poles overhead. Soon the entrance flap will open, letting light pour in. A fur trader once described the first breath of air after a blizzard as sharp as glass, yet strangely sweet. Families stepped out smiling, inhaling deeply, tasting survival itself. You imagine it, the crisp sting of frozen air, the faint pine smoke from nearby lodges, the dazzling whiteness. Some anthropologists suggest these mornings carried spiritual weight, a sense of renewal in a storm-cleansed world. Others argue for practicality, checking snow drifts, digging out supplies, planning the day. Perhaps both are true, renewal and necessity intertwined. The flap stirs, a shaft of light slicing into the dim lodge. Snow glare bounces off the hide walls, harsh but beautiful. A man steps out, boots crunching through the drift. Endless white stretches before him, the horizon pale blue, the sky impossibly wide. The storm is gone, but its silence remains, a stage ready for survival's next act. Activity resumes quickly. Adults shovel snow from the lodge, clearing ventilation and preventing collapse. Children stamp paths, turning drifts into trails. Dogs leap through powder, disappearing and bursting out again. Life pushes back against silence. A missionary account notes that laughter often accompanied this work. Families treated the labor with playfulness, snowballs thrown, children sliding, adults smiling. The silence of the storm's aftermath was replaced by living voices. Scholars debate whether such lightheartedness was common or romanticized by outsiders. Some mornings may have been grim with hunger and fatigue, but imagining dogs bounding, children shouting, and adults smiling, it's clear joy played a role in survival. You close your eyes briefly, feeling snow's brightness through hide walls. Smoke and fur linger, but fresh air creeps in through the flap. You inhale, sharp and sweet. Silence is broken. Footsteps, voices, scraping poles freed from snow. Life continues. The fire is fed, flames rising higher with added wood and dung. Its light is now companionable, not desperate. You stretch under your furs, knowing the storm's hardest part is over. Silence has been acknowledged, broken, reshaped into recovery. You relax, lulled by movement and laughter, carried faintly through the flap. The storm's quiet has passed, replaced by survival's rhythm. Boots crunching, dogs barking, voices calling. You drift to sleep, aware that even a blizzard's aftermath becomes part of life's cycle. The sun climbs higher, turning snow drifts into glittering waves. Yet brightness cannot erase the deeper concern pressing on families: food. The storm may be gone, but hunting trails are buried, herds scattered, and animals silent. Inside the lodge, the atmosphere shifts. Laughter softens, chores take on purpose, and thoughts turn to what will fill everyone's stomachs today. After blizzards, hunting could be nearly impossible for days. Deep snow slowed every step, while prey animals sheltered themselves, nearly invisible on the white plains. Families depended heavily on stores, pemmican, dried meat, nuts, corn, or whatever trade goods they had prepared before the storm. Without these provisions, hunger could set in quickly. What may surprise you is the resourcefulness families showed in stretching supplies. Dense pemmican, for example, was sometimes boiled into soups, thinned with snowmelt, and shared widely. Even a small scrap could flavor a large pot sufficient for everyone. Children were taught early to appreciate every bite, never waste food, and never take more than they needed. You can picture the pot now, steam rising gently above the fire, carrying the comforting smell of smoke and fat despite scarcity. Scholars debate whether blizzards caused true famine or only temporary hunger. Diaries from traders recount families reduced to chewing hides during prolonged storms. Others argue careful preparation and mobility generally kept starvation at bay. The reality likely lay somewhere in between. Some winters merciful, others merciless. Survival often depended on how many herds had been found in previous seasons. A lesser-known account describes families cracking frozen marrow bones after storms, lightly roasting them, and sharing the rich fat. An observer noted the children's faces gleamed with grease. Though modest, it was enough for a small feast. You can imagine that moment, the fire popping, hands greasy, laughter cutting through tension as marrow warmed hungry bellies. The lodge smells of cooking. Someone stirs a pot, thick with dissolved pemmican. Children sit taller, drawn by the aroma. Dogs sniff eagerly, tails thumping, aware their portion comes only after people have eaten. Hunger sharpens every sense. A missionary noted that even in scarcity, families often set aside a tiny share as an offering, tossed into the fire or left outside for spirits or animals. To outsiders, it seemed wasteful. To those inside, it was essential. Giving back maintained balance, even when little remained. It reminded everyone that survival was not only about hoarding but also about respect. Anthropologists suggest this practice helped maintain psychological resilience. Giving while hungry reframed scarcity as part of a relationship with land, animals, and unseen guardians. Others argue it was simply tradition. Either way, the ritual gave meaning to scarcity, softening its impact. Bowls are filled, portions carefully measured. Children eat first, then elders, then the rest. Each person eats slowly, savoring every mouthful. Conversation is quiet, though not grim. A murmur of humor rises as someone jokes about the wolves outside. Laughter flickers, brief but genuine. Hunger does not erase humanity, it sharpens it. The children's patience surprises you. No tantrums, no grabbing. They eat as taught, knowing storms test patience, that both plenty and hunger come and go. Survival is not indulgence, but balance. The discipline of food sharing is as much a part of culture as songs or stories. A trader recalled being astonished when a family offered him their last scraps during a blizzard. He wrote, "They fed me, though they had little themselves, and I would have perished without them." Hospitality, even in hunger, remained central. You sense the same spirit here. The pot is shared, each bowl given without resentment. Historians continue debating whether outsiders exaggerated winter hunger to highlight their own resilience. Some records depict families as perpetually starving, others suggest skill and planning usually prevailed. In this lodge, the truth is nuanced. Hunger came in degrees, sometimes sharp, sometimes dull, but always remembered, shaping behavior. The fire warms the pot again, steam curling upward. The smell fills the lodge, promising energy. Children lick their bowls. Asian. You lean back, realizing storms test not just hides and poles, but discipline, eating carefully, sharing fairly, respecting scarcity. These acts keep communities whole. Without them, no lodge could survive a winter. You close your eyes, warmed by the imagined broth, comforted by the smell of food, steady in the knowledge that hunger has been faced before and will come again, always met with resilience. The storm may take much, but it cannot take the will to share, endure, and wait for herds to return. Bowls are licked clean, the pot scraped until only a thin glaze remains. Hunger is dulled, though not erased. The next pressing task is not only about food or fuel, it is about finding your way again. Storms erase paths, cover landmarks, and leave the world unrecognizable by morning. Plains could transform after a heavy blizzard. Hills softened, valleys filled, and even trees bent under snow, their shapes disguised. Hunters needed more than sharp eyes. They relied on memory, intuition, and skill to navigate a land that had changed. Families cultivated this sense of direction from early childhood. Parents taught children to notice subtle cues: the prevailing wind, snow drifts against hills, faint grass poking through the crust. Children learned to mark the sun's position even on cloudy days, to sense direction with their bodies when vision failed. Imagine a child standing in knee-deep snow, confidently declaring the herd's last route. Scholars debate whether families used markers before storms, like poles or tied bundles of grass. Some accounts show markers saved lives. Others argue memory and instinct were the primary guides. The truth is likely a mixture. Sometimes markers helped, sometimes the land itself. A trader's note describes elders teaching children to close their eyes and step forward, then guess direction from the wind. It was practice, a game with serious stakes. Losing orientation could mean danger or wasted energy. Better to train early, even in play, than face helplessness later. Inside the lodge, adults murmur about who will step out first, who will check the drifts, who will scout for movement. Dogs whine softly, eager to stretch and sniff hidden trails. Children huddle, wide-eyed, half excited, half fearful. To them, the white world outside is both playground and threat. A missionary once described walking with hunters after a blizzard, puzzled when they crouched to study a snowdrift as if reading a book. "They could see what I could not," he admitted, observing how subtle depressions in the snow revealed paths once taken by buffalo or landmarks shaped by the wind. The skill seemed remarkable to him, yet for the hunters, it was simply the language of their land. Some anthropologists argue that navigating post-storm terrain was not mystical but a highly refined form of pattern recognition developed over years. Others suggest a spiritual dimension, a belief that ancestors or spirits guided them through wind and snow. As always, the line between skill and vision is blurred. Imagine a hunter standing still, eyes closed, knowing where to go without a map. What is striking is the calm in this planning. There is no rush to open the lodge flap and step into the whiteness. Patience governs the process. Adults assess risks carefully, balancing the danger of getting lost with the need to check food or scout herds. Waiting, conserving energy, is as strategic as walking. Survival depends not on boldness alone but on timing. The flap shifts, letting light into the lodge. A man steps out, snow crunching under his boots. He pauses, scanning the horizon. You picture the stillness, a world flattened into endless white, the sun's faint glow glinting off drifts like glass. Each step must be deliberate, each landmark confirmed. Behind him, others wait, trusting his knowledge of how storms reshape the land. One explorer noted hunters dragging long poles through fresh snow, leaving trails to guide them back. At first, it seemed awkward, but when the wind shifted, these lines in the snow became lifelines. Some scholars debate whether storm navigation influenced broader cultural values of memory and observation. Did the constant attention to tracks, wind, and shadows strengthen oral traditions? Did it train minds to store large amounts of information without writing, because forgetting could mean death? While arguments continue, watching scouts outside suggests the answer leans toward yes. Dogs bark sharply against the silence. Hunters crouch, studying faint marks in the drift, perhaps a rabbit track, perhaps hints of larger prey. Hunger does not rush them. Every clue is considered, every step measured. The storm may have erased much, but it cannot erase the knowledge preserved in human memory. Children press against the lodge walls, peeking through gaps, eager for news. Elders sit by the fire, calm, trusting the scouts' expertise. Smoke and drying hides scent the air, now tinged with anticipation, the hunger for direction as much as for food. You close your eyes, imagining stepping into that white world. Could you navigate it, or would the silence overwhelm you? Here, the answer comes not from luck but from training, memory, patience, and the belief that even a blank landscape can be read. You settle back among the firs, listening to crunching footsteps and soft voices. To those who know how to read it, the story continues. Inside, life resumes quietly, stoking fires, arranging hides, low conversation, all underpinned by strategy. Survival after storms depends on planning. Winter survival relied heavily on foresight. Families did not stumble into safety. Months in advance, they stored pemmican, dried corn, and herbs. Hides were repaired, poles trimmed, routes scouted. Preparedness was a daily practice, woven into the culture. Surprisingly, this planning was often democratic. Decisions about moving camp, rationing food, or hunting risks were not made by one person alone. Families gathered, elders recalling past winters, younger hunters offering observations, choices shaped both by memory and immediate need. Imagine listening to these quiet discussions. One urging patience, another pressing for action, a third recalling when herds unexpectedly shifted. Survival was a conversation. Historians debate whether decisions leaned more on practical observation or spiritual guidance. Some records highlight dreams, rituals, or visions. Others emphasize tracks, weather patterns, and supply levels. Likely both mattered. Planning combined spirit and skill, faith and fact, until distinctions blurred. One explorer noted families mapping snow in fire ashes, drawing ridges, drifts, and scout paths. These ephemeral maps lasted hours but, in that moment, represented the entire world. You picture children tracing the ash lines, storm chaos organized into shapes on the floor. The elder speaks deliberately, others nod, murmur, weighing options. A young man gestures toward the flap for an early hunt. A woman counters, reminding them of stored provisions. The conversation is quiet but weighty. A missionary noted his surprise at women's authority in these councils. Mothers reminded hunters of children's needs or past severe winters. Decisions were shared. Every voice mattered, reflecting a communal approach over individual heroics. While outsiders sometimes overstate this equality, inside the lodge you sense its truth. Survival required cooperation. No single person could withstand winter alone. Even hunger does not disturb this calm. Each memory, each voice, is considered. Storms may bring chaos, but planning brings order. Firelight flickers across focused faces. The elder gestures to the roof, noting high snow and the need to check structures before travel. Another points to children under firs, proof that safety for the youngest is a priority. Every factor, snow depth, food stores, elders' health, dogs' moods, is part of the calculation. A trader recounted a night when families debated risking a long hunt after a blizzard, showing the weight of collective judgment and careful timing. Voices debated the pros and cons late into the night until an elder shared a story of a past storm where rushing had led to loss. That memory shifted the group's decision, and they waited 3 more days. When the herds finally appeared, their patience paid off. The trader noted that storms were remembered as teachers. You nod inwardly. Patience guided by memory becomes its own kind of strength. Some scholars argue whether councils convened after storms followed a formal structure or were more spontaneous. Were decisions made at set times, or did they emerge naturally as the fire crackled and tasks demanded attention? The records vary, but sitting here, it seems the structure matters less than the outcome. Formal or informal, planning was constant, woven into survival like threads in a robe. You lean back, absorbing the murmurs, the rhythm of the fire, the calm deliberation. No one pretends to control the weather. Planning acknowledges uncertainty and adapts to it. The storm has passed, but its lessons linger in memory and in voice. What surprises you is how familiar, even modern, this feels. You recall meetings in your own life, people gathering to weigh options, plan projects, assess risks. Here, stakes are primal: warmth, food, survival. Perhaps that is why the calm feels so profound. No distractions, no wasted noise, just shared determination to endure. The council murmurs on. Dogs shift. Children sleep. Outside, the snow waits. Inside, order prevails over chaos. You close your eyes, reassured that survival depends not on luck but on careful thought, shared voices, and the memory of past storms. The council quiets, leaving only the fire's sigh and the distant groan of shifting snow. Yet there is another layer of protection in the lodge, subtler than furs or weapons, less immediate than food or fire. It lives in songs, whispers, and small rituals, practices that weave courage when storms threaten to unravel it. Winter gave ceremony particular weight. While summer brought large gatherings and dances, blizzards pressed families inward, making rituals smaller, more intimate. A pinch of tobacco in the fire, a soft chant before sleep, a feather brushed across a child's forehead, all ordinary acts infused with sacredness. These gestures blended seamlessly with everyday life. Stirring stew could become a prayer. Adjusting hides could carry a whispered invocation for the storm to pass. Survival itself was ritual, and ritual was survival. Scholars debate whether these practices were mainly collective or individual. Some accounts describe entire families chanting softly together. Others highlight private prayers whispered in the dark. Likely, both occurred: communal strength when needed, personal courage when silence demanded. One explorer noted lying awake in a lodge, hearing what he thought were snores, only to realize an elder quietly chanted all night. Though he did not understand the language, the rhythm itself brought calm. The fire pops. Smoke rises toward the lodge's crown. You imagine sage sprinkled onto embers, its sharp scent curling upward, carrying prayers into the storm's fading breath. The fragrance of smoke, hide, and wood mingles, earthy, otherworldly. Missionaries recorded that children often joined small offerings, tossing a berry into flames or murmuring thanks before eating. Sacredness was naturally woven into childhood. Anthropologists suggest such rituals built psychological resilience, turning helplessness into action. Others argue the acts were believed to influence weather, health, or safety. Perhaps both are true. These practices were quiet. No loud ceremonies, only whispers, gentle gestures. Strength here is steady, not flashy. A dog shifts, ears flicking. Children sigh, nestling closer to parents. Adults sit calm, some eyes closed, lips moving faintly. Storms may rage, yet the rhythm of ritual continues unbroken. A trader once recalled being asked to place his hand over a flame as part of a prayer before sleep. The heat was uncomfortable, but afterward he felt strangely calmer, as if the fire sealed a promise. Scholars debate whether rituals aimed outward to calm the weather or inward to calm hearts. Perhaps both. Families slept more soundly with whispered prayers, herbs offered, and gestures performed. Sleep was as critical as food. Without rest, survival faltered. Firelight dances on hides, shadows stretching and collapsing. Drowsiness pulls you, comforted by the thought that prayers, spoken or sung, form a protective layer as tangible as furs and snow. Calm spreads. Even an outsider in imagination feels soothed. You need not understand the words. The acts themselves carry meaning. Acknowledging forces beyond control, joining voice and breath to uncertainty, creates presence and strength. The lodge quiets. Children and adults drift deeper into rest. Fire glows steady, smoke curling, storm whispering outside. You close your eyes, comforted by the invisible shield formed by ritual, prayer, and faith. The storm may test bodies, but the spirit answers with calm. Sleep comes, layered in both seen and unseen protection. The lodge becomes a circle of safety, held not just by poles and hides, but by whispered words rising like smoke into the winter sky. The night returns to rhythm. Storm groans outside, fire glows low, sleepers breathe in unison. A thought presses: how long can a lodge endure such storms? Not just a night, but weeks and months? The teepee becomes more than shelter, a living partner in survival. Its design was remarkably adaptable. Poles flexed under pressure. Hide coverings shed snow and wind. Summer flaps released heat. Winter flaps sealed warmth. Snow packed at the base preserved the interior. This was no fragile tent. It was a structure honed over centuries, shaped by experience and careful observation. Surprisingly, storms often strengthened the teepee rather than weakened it. Snow piling against the outer hides acted as natural insulation, creating a shell that kept warmth in and drafts out. What outsiders might see as a threat, the heavy weight of snow, was a gift if managed correctly. Families knew when to clear snow from the smoke hole and when to let drifts build along the base. Balance was essential. Scholars still debate whether teepees could survive the harshest blizzards without damage. Some accounts describe poles snapping under relentless pressure, forcing families to rebuild. Others claim the design was so resilient that collapse was rare when carefully maintained. Likely, both were true. Skillful setup determined endurance, and mistakes were punished mercilessly by storms. A lesser-known diary from an explorer recounts families adjusting poles even during storms, briefly venturing into the howling night to tighten ropes or re-angle stakes. He wrote that they treated the lodge as though it were alive, tending it like a creature that needed care. You can imagine figures crouched in snow, hands numb from cold, yet steady as they secured knots, trusting the structure to cradle them once more. Inside, your eyes rise to the poles converging into a crown around the smoke hole. Firelight makes them glow golden, like the ribs of a great living creature. The hides stretched over them ripple with the storm's breath, creaking softly. It feels as though you are inside a chest, protected by the breathing body of the teepee itself. One missionary noted that families sometimes spoke of their lodges with affection, even giving them names. To him, it seemed fanciful. To the inhabitants, however, the structure was as vital as dogs, weapons, or fire. It had moods, strengths, and weaknesses. Neglect was unthinkable. Care was survival itself. Some anthropologists argue that the circular design had symbolic meaning as well as practical. The circle represented continuity, seasonal cycles, and family bonds. Others are skeptical, suggesting function was the primary motivation. Yet when you watch faces glowing in the round, the symbolism feels inevitable. Amid the chaos outside, the circle inside offers unity. The teepee also makes subtle, surprising sounds. When snow slides from its sides, a soft hiss escapes, almost a sigh of relief. The structure releases weight and steadies again. A dog shifts at the flap, letting in a brief draft. The hides flutter and settle, poles groaning faintly before calming. The sound is steady, like an elder's joints shifting in sleep. You sense how alive the place is, how survival depends on partnership between people and their home. A trader recounted families carrying teepee poles across great distances, repairing them carefully if they cracked. Poles sometimes lasted decades, bearing the marks of many winters. He wrote that would seem to hold memory, carrying storms within its scars. Scholars debate whether the teepee was the most efficient winter shelter compared to heavier earth lodges or dugouts. Critics argue heavier shelters offered more insulation, while defenders highlight the teepee's mobility and adaptability. The debate continues, but inside the warmth of this lodge, the design's genius is clear. It may not be unbreakable, but it is exactly sufficient. Flexible, warm, portable, alive. What strikes you finally is the gratitude you feel toward the structure itself. Leaning back, hand brushing the rough hide warmed by firelight, you sense the teepee as a companion, a guardian, a silent participant in survival. The fire pops. Shadows leap. The teepee breathes with you. Outside, snow and silence reign. Inside, warmth and resilience hold sway. For countless winters, this design has carried families through fiercer storms, and it will continue to do so as long as humans need circles against the chaos of snow. When dawn arrives, pale light spills into the lodge, reflecting off towering snowdrifts. The air feels lighter, freer from fear. Families stir, stretching slowly, savoring warmth. Children laugh a little louder, reclaiming the night's memory. Storms were woven into seasonal memory, not forgotten, but remembered as lessons guiding future choices. Children growing up with these stories learned how furs, fire, patience, and prayer could save lives. Storms were often retold not as tragedies, but as challenges overcome. A blizzard might later be remembered as the night laughter softened fear, a prayer brought safety, or a dog kept toes from frostbite. Memory celebrated endurance rather than suffering. Historians differ on whether such retellings romanticized hardship or reflected genuine cultural resilience. Likely both. Suffering was real, yet framing it as victory empowered communities. A trader living with a plains family observed that after each storm, elders held small gatherings to recount the night's events. The storm became history, even myth. Children gained courage as fear turned into narrative. You can imagine the elders' voice, children leaning in, adults smiling knowingly, as the storm transforms into a story. The fire burns brighter as more fuel feeds it. Steam rises from a richer pot, filling the lodge with the smell of meat and fat. Children crowd closer, dogs circle eagerly. A night of scarcity gives way to a morning of modest plenty. A missionary noted families sometimes marked the storm's end with a feast, however small. To outsiders it seemed reckless. Yet it was meaningful, honoring endurance, giving thanks, reminding all that life could still be shared. Anthropologists argue such rituals were essential to mental well-being, preventing despair after fear and hunger. Others see it as natural celebration after hardship. Perhaps both are true, but either way, the laughter and warmth at storm's end kept spirits intact. What strikes you is how quickly the lodge shifts from a place of shelter back to a home. Hides are straightened, weapons polished, garments repaired. The teepee hums again with ordinary sounds, mothers gently scolding children for spilled broth, dogs nosing for scraps, elders humming softly as they watch the fire. The extraordinary night fades into a normal morning as if the storm had already passed. The flap opens, letting cold air rush in. A man steps inside, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. He speaks quickly, and though the words are unclear, the tone is unmistakable. News of game. Perhaps tracks have been found. Perhaps herds are near. Excitement spreads through the lodge. Hunger will soon be satisfied. The storm has not claimed victory. A note from explorers observes that people often saw these moments as proof of balance. The storm takes, the land provides. This rhythm of hardship and reward was expected, accepted. To complain would be to miss the pattern. To endure was to find purpose in the cycle itself. Some scholars argue modern readers may romanticize this endurance. Do we admire resilience while overlooking suffering? The question remains, but as smiles appear at news of food, it is clear both pain and strength were real, intertwined. The storm was harsh, yet survival was equally real. The fire crackles, laughter rises, bowls are passed. Children giggle, elders smile quietly, dogs bark in delight. You lean back, warmed not only by the flames but by the resilience shining in each face. The storm has ended, but its lessons persist. Prepare, share, respect the unseen, rely on family, and never underestimate the power of laughter. What surprises you most is the peace you feel. The blizzard that once threatened to overwhelm has become part of a larger story, woven into the lives of those who endured. And in that understanding lies a quiet truth: storms will return, but so will the circle of fire, fur, and family. The storm has passed, the long night over. Your breath slows, tension drains from your shoulders, thoughts settling like snow into silence. The fire burns low, steady and gentle rather than desperate. You hear the last embers crackle faintly, and let that sound carry you toward rest. Outside, the land is blanketed in white, a canvas cleaned by the storm. The air remains crisp, awaiting the sun. Inside, you are wrapped in warmth, layered in hides, surrounded by echoes of song, story, and prayer. You remember children's laughter, dogs' comfort, elders' murmurs, and the flicker of flames that never surrendered. Close your eyes and picture the teepee again. Poles stretch upward like ribs of a guardian, hides drawn tight, snow at its base like another blanket. You are safe inside that circle, untouched by wind. The storm is memory, softened by survival's glow. Breathe slowly, matching the rhythm of the dying fire, the lodge's steady heart. You are not alone. Generations before endured nights like this, and generations after will too. You are part of that long, unbroken story, resting as they did, safe in warmth. Let the weight of the blanket settle. Let your body grow heavy. Let your mind drift like snowflakes spiraling downward. The storm is gone. The night is gentle, and sleep waits to gather you fully. Drift now, quietly, peacefully. Sweet dreams.